Welcome, everybody, and good morning, and welcome to the City Planning Commission public meeting. And Madam Secretary,
Okay.
please begin.
Good morning. This is a City Planning Commission public meeting held in Spector Hall, 22 Reade Street. Today is Wednesday, January 18, 2017. As a courtesy during the proceedings, we ask that you please turn off all cell phones and beepers. All speakers should fill out a speaker's card at the desk outside of Spector Hall. In addition, we ask that those providing testimony please identify yourself, limit your remarks to 3 minutes, and speak clearly into the microphone. I will now call the roll. Chairman Weisbrod.
Here.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Besser. Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Cerullo. Commissioner Delausse.
Here.
Commissioner Dweck.
Here.
Commissioner Edie.
Here.
Commissioner Efron.
Here.
Commissioner Knight.
Here.
Commissioner Levin.
Here.
Commissioner Marin.
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Here.
A quorum is present. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of Wednesday, January 4, 2017.
On the minutes, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, the minutes are approved.
Thank you. Scheduling on calendar numbers 1 through 6, excluding calendar number 4, we have resolutions for adoption, scheduling Wednesday, January 18, 2017, for a public hearing to be held in Spector Hall, 22 Reade Street.
On the resolutions, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, the resolutions are approved, are adopted. Pardon me.
Thank you. The next part of the calendar is the report section on page 7. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 7, CD5, N170167HKM, in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of the Minnie E. Young residence, on the adoption of calendar number 7 for referral to the City Council. Chairman Weisbrod.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delausse.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Calendar number 7 has been adopted. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 8, CD5, N170168HKM, in the matter of a communication regarding the landmark designation of the Martin Erdman residence for adoption on calendar number 8 for referral to the City Council. Chairman Weisbrod.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delausse.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron. Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Calendar number 8 has been adopted. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 9, CD5, N170169HKM, in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of the 18 East 41st Street building, on the adoption of calendar number 9 for referral to the City Council. Chairman Weisbrod.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delausse.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Calendar number 9 has been adopted. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 10, CD5, N170170HKM, in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of the Hampton Shops building, on the adoption of calendar number 10 for referral to the City Council. Chairman Weisbrod.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delausse.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Calendar number 10 has been adopted. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 11, CD5, N170171HKM, in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of the Yale Club of New York City, on the adoption of calendar number 11 for referral to the City Council. Chairman Weisbrod.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delausse.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron. Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Calendar number 11 has been adopted. Borough of Manhattan Calendar number 12, CD5 N170172 HKM, in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of the Pershing Square Building. On the adoption of calendar number 12 for referral to the City Council, Chairman Weisbrod,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delauss. Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Calendar number 12 has been adopted. Borough of Manhattan calendar number 13, CD5 N17013-173 HKM, in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of the Gray Bar Building. On the adoption of calendar number 13 for referral to the City Council, Chairman Weisbrod,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delauss.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Calendar number 13 has been adopted. Borough of Manhattan calendar number 14, CD6 N170174 HKM, in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of the Shelton Hotel. On the adoption of calendar number 14 for referral to the City Council, Chairman Weisbrod,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delauss.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Calendar number 14 has been adopted. Borough of Manhattan calendar number 15, CD6 N170175 HKM, in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of the Beverly Hotel. On the adoption of calendar number 15 for referral to the City Council, Chairman Weisbrod,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delauss.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Calendar number 15 has been adopted. Borough of Manhattan calendar number 16, CD6 N170176 HKM, in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of the Hotel Lexington. On the adoption of calendar number 16 for referral to the City Council, Chairman Weisbrod,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delauss.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Calendar number 16 has been adopted. Borough of Manhattan calendar number 17, CD5 N170177 HKM, in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of 400 Madison Avenue. On the adoption of calendar number 17 for referral to the City Council, Chairman Weisbrod,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delauss.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz. Calendar number 17 has been adopted. Borough of Manhattan calendar number 18, CD6 N170194 HKM, in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of the 601 Lexington Avenue and St. Peter's Church. On the adoption of calendar number 18 for referral to the City Council, Chairman Weisbrod,
I feel like Molly Bloom, you can only say yes so many ways. Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor, Commissioner Delauss,
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Efron,
Yes.
Commissioner Knight,
Yes.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Calendar number 18 has been adopted. Borough of Staten Island calendar number 19, CD3 N170109 RCR, in the matter of an application for the grant of a certification concerning 10 McKee Avenue. For adoption on calendar number 19, Chairman Weisbrod.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delauss.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Yes.
Calendar number 19 has been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 20, CD3, N170121 RCR, in the matter of an application for the grant of a certification concerning 412 Loretto Street for adoption on calendar number 20. Chairman Weisbrod.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delauss. Commissioner Dueck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight. Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Marin. Commissioner Ortiz. Calendar number 20 has been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 21, CD3, N170125 RCR, in the matter of an application for the grant of a certification concerning H71 Lamont Avenue for adoption on calendar number 21. Chairman Weisbrod.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delauss. Commissioner Dueck. Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight. Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Marin. Commissioner Ortiz. Calendar number 21 has been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 22, CD3, N170095 RCR, in the matter of an application for the grant of a certification concerning Purdy Place for adoption on calendar number 22. Chairman Weisbrod.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delauss. Commissioner Dueck. Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight. Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Marin. Commissioner Ortiz. Calendar number 22 has been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 23, CD3, N170074 RCR, in the matter of an application for the grant of a certification concerning 307 and 309 Yetman Avenue for adoption on calendar number 23. Chairman Weisbrod.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Delauss. Commissioner Dueck. Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight. Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Marin. Commissioner Ortiz. Calendar number 23 has been adopted. The next part of the calendar is the public hearing section on page 14. Borough of Brooklyn, calendar numbers 24 and 25. Calendar number 24, CD3, C160221 ZMK. Calendar number 25, N160222 ZRK. A public hearing in the matter of applications for a zoning map and zoning text amendment concerning the Rose Castle.
First speaker is Richard Lobel. Mr. Lobel, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Weisbrod. Good morning to the commissioners. We are very happy to be with you today to be presenting the Rose Castle rezoning. I am joined by Frank St. Jacques of my office, who's setting up boards, as well as Zelig Weiss from Riverside Developers, the applicant in this application. And the rezoning that is proposed here, and you can take a look at the zoning change map directly adjacent to me, is for a rezoning of two sites. The first site being on Flushing Avenue, which is currently zoned M12, would be rezoned to an R7A with a C24 overlay. And the second site being a site between Franklin and Skillman Street, approximately 200 feet south of Flushing Avenue, would be rezoned to an MX4 M12 R6A district. This is not the first time that this property has been before the commission. This property, specifically that on between Skillman and Franklin, was before the commission in 2001 for the Flushing Bedford rezoning. And at that time, this site was actually designated to be rezoned not to an MX4 R6A M12, but to actually to an R7A M12 R7A. At the time, the commission approved that. At the council, the mixed-use district was scaled back to an R6A, and the site itself was removed from the rezoning. So basically, although the southern portion of the block was rezoned, the property under question right now was not. And so at the time, the commission's findings were that this property in particular, as well as much of the area, while it did have a manufacturing designation, was largely vacant. There was an increasing need for residential development here, and so it was appropriate to rezone that site and much of the surrounding area, about 14 or 15 blocks, to residential contextual districts. So now we find ourselves in 2017. And the reason that I'm happy to be before the commission today is because we went back to Community Board 5 times on this matter, 3 times to the Land Use Committee, twice to the full board, And after one failed resolution, Community Board 3, which was against many of the aspects that are engendered by this rezoning, including the mandatory inclusionary housing text amendment, as well as the rezoning itself at the time, now is in favor of this rezoning. So we're really happy to see that the community is supportive of this rezoning. The sites themselves are a 39,000 square foot site along Flushing Avenue and a 35,000 square foot site between Franklin and Skillman. And these sites are, in the Franklin-Skillman site, vacant. And in the case of the Flushing Avenue site, are developed with 2 to 3 story commercial buildings and a 1-story commercial building with kind of older manufacturing as well as a catering facility. And so the proposal here would be to rezone them to, of course, allow residential.
That was perfectly timed, Mr. Lobel. Although I'm sure you had more to say.
Just a little.
Questions for Mr. Lobel? Mr. Dwyer.
Thank you. Can you speak to this commission on the borough president's recommendation that you split one of the parcels into the first option of MIH?
Sure. So the MIH option, which was selected by the developer after much consideration, was to do workforce housing on the site, the workforce housing option. So there's an underlying option 1 or option 2, and then there's the workforce option. The underlying option 1 or option 2 basically allows for mandatory inclusionary housing to apply to the site if the workforce housing option is not utilized within 10 years from the date of its imposition. So should the building not be built, should mandatory inclusionary housing not be provided on the site for any reason, after 10 years it would convert to the option 1 or option 2 underlying that. But what they really seek at the site is workforce housing. And the reason that they've done that is because there was a lot of review of the surrounding area as well as the income levels. The applicant reviewed, and the applicant's team reviewed, the BAE economic study produced in 2015, as well as the mandatory inclusionary housing study produced by the department. And what it demonstrates is that this neighborhood of Brooklyn is identified as a moderately strong neighborhood. So in the realm of economic income and housing levels, when you look at the appendices to the BAE study, you see either you're starting at weak and you're going to strong, and this is in the middle of that. And so the idea, as was detailed in the Commission's report on mandatory inclusionary housing, as well as the BAE study, is this. When you have a market, which is a middle market, which is not unduly strong, whereby a subsidy would not be required to provide 60% or 80% of AMIs, or not sufficiently weak that that market rate housing wouldn't work, you should be encouraging developers, owners, applicants to provide workforce housing. What this allows is it allows the private owners to further provide the range of housing to income levels which represent the broad diversity of the city. So the idea here is that the city is recognizing that there are certain areas where absent subsidy, a 60% or 80% level won't work. And so the city should be devoting its resources to that area. This is one of the areas, and I think it's neighborhood tabulation area 75 on the BAE maps. But basically, this area is sufficiently strong where if we are permitted to proceed with workforce housing, which does guarantee income levels at certain levels of 70 and 90%, as well as 115% and as an average, and up to 135. Should we allow this to proceed, we're going to have permanently affordable housing, but also permanently affordable for middle market and middle income families. So while we respect the borough president's decision, and we had a very thorough conversation with them at the hearing, when we left there, we actually had the deputy borough president was discussing the fact that she was interested in seeing how this building, which essentially will be self-sustaining with no subsidy for either of the options, would do. And we feel very strongly about this neighborhood, and we feel strongly about the project such that we feel that workforce housing is a good option here.
So you're saying that the deputy borough president was in favor?
So the written report obviously indicates that they would prefer us to do option 1 in line with the community board. But the conversation that night, and as would be borne out by transcripts, were that we had a very thorough conversation of the type of workforce housing that we wanted here. So it was a very positive discussion. I also note that, the community board here didn't immediately take to this project. There was a failed resolution, which was 18 in favor, 17 against, 2 abstentions for a resolution with regards to this whole development. So it failed based on the fact that the yeses did not outweigh the noes and abstentions. It was as a rule of order. When they re-voted on this, I think that there were 2 basic concerns of the community board. There was concerns about affordability, and there was also concerns about the feasibility of the project. So upon my subsequent conversations with the community board, with the district manager, I think that there was an understanding that there are certain aspects of this project which are important to the local area, but I think that there was a recognition that they want this building to work. And so what we're proposing in the workforce option, as we've discussed with the department coming up through this application for well over a year and a half, has been that we do want to do the workforce option, so.
Thank you for the clarification.
But just to follow up on Mr. Dweck's question, as you said, this is a neighborhood that is becoming stronger economically, and given that, isn't it especially important to have either option 1 or option 2 as a protection for this neighborhood, as opposed to as a neighborhood that's getting stronger, where this market is going to become more economically feasible for your client to build, and at the same time cross-subsidize and support the existing population, or to some extent the existing population in this neighborhood?
We think that, and this is in consultation with the BAE study, this neighborhood is identified as a moderate neighborhood. The neighborhoods where workforce housing is basically indicated are middle market neighborhoods, 1 tier higher than moderate. So as it stands right now, even the BAE study would say, are you sure you can do this? Can you really support workforce housing here? So recognizing the chair's comment about this neighborhood and where it's going, as it exists right now, the developer here is basically relying upon a trend and their knowledge of the area in order to provide this type of housing. But what I would add is this. Of the 29 or so properties identified in the BAE study as moderate, of those neighborhood tabulation areas, this is 23 of 29 as far as how strong it is. There's an increase not solely in the income levels of the surrounding area, but also in the number of residents coming to this area. So there's a 20% increase in just the bodies coming into this community district, to this neighborhood tabulation area. There is a dire need for more housing here. So the idea here is that we are saying, we know there's more people coming in. We're satisfied that things are going to be just strong enough to allow us to really toy with and to envelop the middle market housing market, which would allow for workforce housing here. So
I mean, I'll just comment. I'm not asking for a response, but isn't, I mean, for all the reasons you're saying, isn't, given that the neighborhood's getting stronger, given that the neighborhood is bringing in more higher income people, isn't it even more compelling to at least provide some modest protection to some people who are living there now and that certainly has always been one of the major tenets of mandatory inclusionary housing. But, Ms. Delos.
Mr. LaBelle, can you just, 2 questions really. One is, if you could dig a little bit deeper or provide a little more information on the current manufacturing uses, I guess in particular in the first site that you're proposing, R7A. So it sounds like those particular uses would be displaced.
there is a window and door distribution warehousing center which would be displaced. The employment there is minimal. So it is not a large job generating site. It is relatively a light site. The other site on the corner is a catering facility, which also, when there are events, employs people in the service industry, is not that heavily utilized to the point where we're going to be losing a lot of jobs. As a matter of fact, the 8,800 square feet along Flushing Avenue of retail that is intended for the site, with the commercial overlay, would likely bring well more employment to the area than would the existing manufacturing and catering uses.
And is there any effort to work with those businesses? I don't know if the owner has other spaces that may be appropriate for them. Obviously, it's not too far from the Navy Yard. I'm just wondering if there's any effort to work with them. And then I have a question going back
Sure.
to the NIH.
I actually don't have that information, but I'm happy to provide that supplementally to the commission.
Okay, I hear what you're saying about the number of jobs. It would be, not all jobs are created equal in terms of what they pay, so that would certainly help, don't know if they perhaps might be different than the jobs that would be coming in the future. And then, I hear what you're saying about the BAE report. I would just say there's been more than a 30% increase in rents in the last 15 years in Community District 3. I think, 115% of AMI is over $100,000 a year, and, the percent of people at that level in the neighborhood currently is about 16%, whereas the vast majority of need is really at lower AMIs. So just from a perspective of lease-up, honestly, you'll see a lot more demand on the other end.
We understand, and it's something that we've looked very carefully at. First of all, the 2016 area median income numbers that I have are 115% would be 69,000 for a single occupancy and 89,000 for a family of 3, so it's slightly below that number.
I'm giving the family of 4, right?
Regardless,
Yeah.
The workforce housing option was created by the commission in order to address markets where buildings could sit and stand on their own without subsidy. And while we are, obviously committed to MIH, it seems like the workforce housing option is not one which has been heavily utilized by the commission in mapping any MIH districts. So the fact is that there are, of the 30% of affordable options here, 10% of those are going to be at an average of 80%. So there's a minimum 5% at 70 and a minimum 5% at 90. And I believe that with the income bands holding at a minimum of 10% for each income band, it likely will be a lot higher than that 5%. So we are sympathetic with that. We understand that we want to offer housing to a broad range, diverse range of residents of the city. We honestly feel that in the scope of where city and scarce city resources can be provided, that this project and this development and this district would be able to stand with a workforce housing option, providing permanently affordable housing to middle-income families in perpetuity. So we understand that. That's where we are on this. I understand all the arguments and such, but it was not done lightly. It was done with some significant consideration.
If I may
Go
have
ahead.
a follow-up. I hear what you're saying, and you're right, we haven't mapped the workforce option. It's because 25% of the population in the city of New York doesn't even have incomes that are high enough to qualify for the lowest AMIs. So the need is elsewhere, generally speaking. I guess, and obviously this conversation will evolve, I'm sure, as you move to the council. But if you all are very set on the workforce option, and yet the community and the borough president and others are really focused on trying to meet a greater need, do you know if the owner would be open to exceeding what the workforce, going beyond what the MIH provision is, and basically not only providing the workforce option, but then providing a percentage above that at AMI levels that aren't permanently affordable, as a way of addressing some of the community's concerns?
We haven't, I've not yet had that discussion with them. We can engage in that discussion, and I can provide information to the commission supplementally. it's a difficult place for us to be in because we have gone through a relatively lengthy pre-certification process where we've been in frequent contact with the department and with the Brooklyn office. And this is coming from a good place in that I've gone for rezonings within the last 10 years to Community Board 3 and I've been sent packing because of issues which were unrelated to land use, but were related to other considerations, which typically don't come before the commission. So, but I think that the fact that this building will, pursuant to MIH, have a foundation and a diverse population, will be a self-sustaining building. I think that if we're talking about a compromise, that the applicant here, and with the community board, we were always on record as saying we wanted workforce housing. We actually, one of the reasons we went back 5 times was because there were modifications made to the building, to the program. The land use committee and Ms. Pinn on the land use committee asked for modifications to the design, to the street wall. We accommodated those. The community board cited those in their recommendations. There was a discussion of using MWBE and LBE employees. We're happy to make that effort. The developer has done that in the past. This is not someone who's unknown to the community. In Community Board 3, they've done 25 buildings, Riverside has. And of those, 18 have been residential, 6 mixed use. So there's a connection. We're on the brink of having a feasible project and really bringing people together on this. So we're trying as hard as we can. We hope to be able to satisfy the commission as well we can, but that's just kind of where we are in our discussion.
I just want to make 2 observations. One, you've given the impression that the department is supportive of the workforce option here, and the department does not, as a general rule, and I'm sure in this case, does not itself on a private application, take a policy position on which option should be,
Of course.
Deployed. That's first up to the commission
Sure.
itself, and second, we as a department just process what an applicant seeks as opposed to endorsing it. And I'm sure there was no endorsement here of at least on the part of the department, of the workforce option. The second observation I'd make is that you suggest that if option 1 or option 2 were adopted here instead of the workforce option, there would necessarily be a city subsidy associated with that. And at least in terms of city policy, housing policy, that's not the case. The city housing policy is very clear that it will only apply subsidy if the applicant is prepared to go deeper or
Sure.
broader than the option that has been adopted. So there's certainly no expectation that if option 1 or option 2 were endorsed and approved here by the commission and ultimately by the city council, that without the applicant agreeing to go broader or deeper than option 1 or 2, that a city subsidy would be applied.
Understood. And echoing both points, of course, the department can't speak for the commission. It was just a frank discussion and an understanding moving forward. But of course, the commission's word obviously is the most important, indeed the only approval that is required at this phase. And we understand that there's no subsidy for 60 or 80%. I think that the understanding on the applicant side is that they're seeking to do a building with no subsidy, and that it's uncertain whether or not they would be able to do that if they were basically doing option 1 or option 2. It's the financials of the project, which this is a project which has been under consideration for some time. Have basically looked at this as a workforce housing option in advance of an actual real building and a real development which can support itself. And so it's not taken lightly. There's obviously, again, many opinions on all sides, but we were just, I guess the discussion with the department was merely our excitement at the prospect of introducing this to this area and having a productive building.
I just want to make it clear that it was a one-sided discussion, because the department really, as in any private application, we're committed, speaking for the department, committed to processing expeditiously private applications and bringing them as quickly as we can to the commission and to the public process for review, whether we support them or not. It's our obligation to certify projects that are where the application is complete, and that doesn't necessarily in any way reflect the department's view of a private application, and that certainly has been
Understood.
the case here.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Ms. Efron.
Thank you. No one can say it better than the chairman. I agree with the comments made, and I, throughout the hearings about MIH, was under the impression that the third option was really exceptional. And I'm sure you've read a lot of the testimony and understood the process, and that you've made the decision that it was the third option seems to be a presumption you're entitled to have, but I think it's important for us to understand.
Of course.
One of the things you said about the first vote and the second vote of the community board was that you characterized the first vote as the community board not thinking the project was viable. And I just wanted to drill down on that a little bit.
Sure.
Is there financing in place? What were the conditions that led you to think that the community thought the project wasn't viable?
I don't think that if I left the impression that the community didn't think the project was viable, I apologize. The vote was, a majority of those casting votes in favor or against voted in favor of that project. I just think that there's the formal resolutions adopting the approval, and then there's discussions that we've had. And if I was delving into the importance of moving forward as far as the community board conditions, they were, they wanted our involvement. They wanted involvement with the developer and the community. They wanted our commitment with regards to MWBE and LBE. They wanted local employment, and we satisfied them with regards to those conditions. I think that the subsequent discussion of there was a discussion about bulk of the building on Flushing and with regards to affordability levels. Those, again, this is just from conversations more than the actual resolutions themselves, but the feeling I got was that those were, obviously important to the community board, but not of tantamount importance as these other measures where the developer was engaged with the community, was bringing employment to the community, and was developing a viable project. So I think, the conversations were, look, this is what we're going to come out with. We understand, for example, that you're asking for an R7A on Flushing, and that, we're asking for that to be reduced. However, we understand that, at the end of the day, we want you to build a building, and, what it takes to get that done is important. So that's the only comment I'd have.
Is the financing in place for the project?
Yeah, I mean, the financing is in place. Riverside is, they're experienced developers. They've developed, all over Brooklyn, and again, have developed 25 buildings in the community boards. So, all the conversations we've had is that the financing is in place.
Thanks.
Ms. Levin.
I guess I have continuing questions about MIH, but let's shift gears a little bit. You characterized the community boards as being generally supportive of this rezoning, but as I read their resolution, they have some conditions in there that essentially pull that back. And we've targeted the MIH portion
Sure.
of it. They want it to be option one, not the workforce option. More importantly, they also want the zoning to be an R6A.
Correct.
Which I would suspect makes this an entirely different project.
Correct.
Can you speak to that one, please?
Sure. So right now, there's a R6A site, which is that between Franklin and Skillman, and there's an R7A site, which is on Flushing. The R7A site would produce a building which would be 8 stories. And when we were discussing what rezoning would be appropriate and what district would be appropriate, we looked at Flushing in general. We looked at the fact that the most rezonings, for example, 74 Wallabout Street, which was approved by the commission in 2012, rezoned this area to an R71 with a C15. So the building types that you see along Flushing here reflect 6, 7, and even 8-story buildings. Whereas the Bedford Avenue site, the Skillman site is clearly, would not be as appropriate. There's already an R6A mapped here. The commission itself actually in 2001 determined that an R7A was appropriate here, but understanding that this was downzoned by the council, we reduced the R7A to an R6A of our own accord so that the existing district could just be extended over the property. But there was a decision and a discussion about kind of segmenting the rezoning such that recognizing the R6A 6-story building is more appropriate on Skillman and Franklin, and an R7A in direct consideration of the R71 across the street as being more appropriate here. The R71, by the way, which was done in 2012, was done pursuant to quality housing, but was not done with any, obviously, affordability requirements. It was pre-MIH. So part of the discussion was to make a viable R7A building.
Well, so that gets me back to my next question, which is about this developer's experience in working with the inclusionary housing program. Have they built other inclusionary housing buildings before? Do they have experience working with HPD in deploying the inclusionary housing program? And particularly, who are they going to choose as the administering agent?
Well, I'll start with the administering agent because the community board expressed a preference for several administering agents to be chosen from local Brooklyn development corporations, and we've begun that outreach process. We have not selected anyone yet, but I think part of the discussion was that the process is so regulated with regards to the inclusionary housing text that we have no issue whatsoever selecting one of these development corporations from this short list.
So I think the point there was to be using an independent, not-for-profit administering agent, someone entirely separate
Sure.
from the developer. Is
Right.
that acceptable?
That is acceptable and is the intention.
Okay. And experience working with MIH?
None of the properties that they've developed within Community Board 3 have been, well, obviously none have been mandatory inclusionary, none have been in an inclusionary housing designated area. So this is something that's new for them. I'm sure it's new for many developers, but they've got an experienced development team and are excited to move forward.
Okay. Have they done inclusionary in any of their other 25?
I believe not. I think it's all been market rate, extensive, but market rate.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Lobel?
Just a comment.
Yes, Mr. Zwick.
To reinforce, the split nature of the site allows the option to kind of have a compromise. I can't stress to you how strongly I feel about that, and it would obviously appease the borough president and the community board. So I would give it second thought.
We'd like to take some time to consider that internally. I've had some difficult cases before the commission. This one seems to
be easy.
Right. Again, I think we're all going towards a good place and a good resolution. But it's something we have to consider strongly.
Certainly, it will make the FAR more palatable to the community board.
Understood. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lobel.
Thank you, Chair.
We also have Zelig Weiss here from the developer to answer questions. And we do have some questions from Ms. Levin. So, Mr. Weiss?
Oh, I don't know if this is Mr. Weiss or Mr. Lobel, but I have a question about the...
Mr. Weiss,
basically
why don't you come up?
Mr. Weiss, thank you very much for coming. It does always help the commission meet the developers in person and understand, and that really gets to my question. I'd like to, I'm sort of curious about your thoughts about this site, how you began thinking about what was the appropriate kind of development here. I think I'd be interested in your thoughts on the conversation we've had about who should be living here, the kinds of families that you'd like to attract. And then my particular question that got my hand in the air was about your thoughts on the retail on Flushing Avenue. There is relatively little retail in the area, and how do you see yourself positioning? What kind of retail do you think you're going to want to see on that Flushing Avenue frontage?
So again, as Richard said the whole time over here, we very carefully looked at the MIH programs and see what is viable for the area and what can be done. We made our numbers as I think Commissioner Efron has asked about financing. We did look at financing, we did sit with the bank, and based on the interest and the price we're paying for the property, we believe that we have to do workforce option in order this project should work. With a lower MIH, I don't think this project will be feasible at all. I mean, we could have done M1 too. I mean, I don't think Richard had mentioned that, and do a 4.8 with community facility and commercial. But we didn't want, it's still an option, but we really believe that the area really needs residential. It's a very high demand, and we wanted to do something for the community. So that's why we went with residential. But at the same time, with the MIH, we really believe that we have to do workforce in order the project should work. Now, in terms of retail, we do believe that Flushing Avenue is a corridor that retail they really need it. I mean, the R7 one across the street, that just finished building, has retail as well. One block to the other side, supermarkets. I think there was a big need for retail in the area.
Are you close enough to know what kind of retail you'd like to have?
I did not really look into that yet, as we don't know where we're going yet. It's not approved yet.
Okay.
But I feel comfortable that we'll have diversity of all types of retail there.
You mentioned the project across the street. Is that one of yours also?
No.
Okay.
I know that guy, but I think at
Okay.
the end, this guy is doing a community facility use. It's going to be a big, I think, a medical facility on the entire first floor.
There's been quite an amount of residential development in the area. Are any of those yours? Can you point to a project that's an
On-
example
on
of the
Skillman?
kind of thing you'd like to do here?
Actually, on Skillman, on the same block that I'm looking at a rezone, across the street, I finished 3 buildings, 48 condos. And across the street of that, I finished another building of 10 condos. On Franklin Avenue, also across the street of this side, there is a small boutique hotel, the Condor Hotel that I built right there, so pretty familiar with that area.
Thank you.
Mr. Knuckles?
Have you thought about unit distribution, numbers of bedrooms across your units?
Okay, so I'm gonna have to, we did that, Richard did that, and
I can give you a rough breakdown. And this, I think to the applicant's credit, this was something which was discussed in detail with the community board, and they were, probably demonstrated by the lack of any comment in their resolution, they were pretty satisfied with the unit breakdown. The unit breakdown, if you'll give me one moment. Let's get it from here. On the Flushing Avenue site, there were, let's see, total 168, right. So there was the unit breakdown for the 168 were 20 studios, 66 one-bedrooms, 26 two-bedrooms, and 56 three-bedrooms, for a total of 168 on the Flushing Avenue site. And then the unit breakdown on the,
Rich, the last 3-bedroom?
oh,
what was
I'm
that?
sorry. It would be 20 studios, 66
One bedroom.
one-bedrooms, 26 twos, and 56 threes.
Okay,
These are all in the Borough President's letter on page 349.
Correct.
okay.
And then the Franklin Avenue distribution would be 40 studios, 34 one-bedrooms, 28 two-bedrooms, and 26 three-bedrooms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Zellos?
Mr. Weiss, thanks for being here. So how long have you owned the two properties?
I think a little shy of 2.5 years,
Okay.
approximately.
So, about the, trying to think, so prior to the mandatory inclusionary housing conversation, certainly prior to MIH passing, so, because you're citing that the cost of acquisition is one of the reasons that it's challenging to consider the earlier option, option 1 or option 2 for MIH. Okay, that's a helpful piece of information, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Weiss or for Ms. LaBelle? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. The next speaker is, in opposition, Bryant Brown from 32BJ. Mr. Brown.
Good morning, Commissioners. Happy belated New Year's as well. My name is Bryant Brown, and I am here speaking on behalf of the 155,000 building service workers that our labor union, SEIU 32BJ, represents nationwide. 32BJ members maintain, clean, and provide security services in schools, as well as in residential and commercial buildings all across the 5 boroughs, including buildings like Rose Castle and Bed-Stuy. This is why I'm here today. I want to ensure that Rose Castle will create high-quality jobs for building service workers in Brooklyn. Building service jobs can be jobs that pay poverty wages with no benefits, or they can be quality jobs that pay wages that allow people to put a roof over their head. We need to make sure that Riverside developers are creating good building service jobs that pay prevailing wages for Brooklyn West residents at Rose Castle. The prevailing wage is the industry standard wage across New York City, and I urge the City Planning Commission to ensure that it is upheld as the standard. This commitment to good jobs is important. The city has an affordable housing and income inequality crisis. That's why we need to make sure we are doing all we can to ensure new development, like Rose Castle, are creating the housing and the jobs that Brooklyn residents need to be able to afford and support themselves and their families in New York City. I urge you to include in your recommendations a clause that urges the Riverside developers at Rose Castle to create good building service jobs that pay the prevailing wage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms. Brown, have you been, and 32BJ been in discussions with the developer here?
As far as I understand, not entirely, not open communication.
Do you know if 32BJ has a relationship with the developer at any of its other properties?
I don't. I can definitely follow up and get back to you on that, though.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Brown? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? Hearing none, the hearing is closed. Thank you very much.
Borough of Brooklyn, calendar number 26, CD6, C170057, ZSK. A public hearing in the matter of an application for the grant of a special permit concerning the Red Hook Initiative.
That's why. Morning. The first speaker is Arthur Ha. Arthur, is this your first appearance back before us?
I believe it is.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. I am Arthur Ha, Planning and Development Specialist with Herrick Feinstein. And without going over everything that you heard yesterday, I would like to first introduce members of the Red Hook Initiative team here today, and then I will provide you with some basic background on the application before you. Here for RHI and expected to speak in order behind me are Jill Eisenhardt, Executive Director and Co-Founder. Marlisa Wise, Project Architect. Elizabeth Lucero, who is a current participant in the RHI programs. And Barry Cagle, COO of RHI, who ought to be able to answer anything that might need further clarification at conclusion. As you know, the current zoning for the project site is M11, where commercial and manufacturing uses are permitted at a maximum FAR of 1, and where community facility use is permitted at a maximum FAR of 2.4. However, the permitted community facility uses are narrowly limited and do not include nonprofit institution without sleeping accommodations, which is the specific use that RHI seeks to operate here under. As the application shows, and as you reviewed yesterday, the proposal would take the total project site FAR from the existing 1.12, which is overbuilt as existing for permitted uses, to 1.25. It's our belief that the requested 74921 special permit is in a lot of ways tailor-made for RHI at this location with regard to the baseline conditions, requirements, and required findings. So in addition to legalizing the existing built conditions and allowing the proposed requested use, the application, if approved, would facilitate an increase in total floor area of approximately 600 square feet across the two buildings, roughly 360 square feet in the proposed new mezzanine at 763 Hicks Street, which is the northern of the two buildings, and roughly 240 square feet of expanded mezzanine at 767 Hicks Street, which is the building at the corner. At 767, the existing mezzanine, which the application does seek to legalize, is currently approximately 585 square feet. On November 9th, Brooklyn Community Board 6 recommended approval with conditions. As you know, on November 14th, the Brooklyn Borough President recommended approval. With that, I will offer to answer any questions you might have or clear the way for the rest of the team to answer specific questions.
Any questions for Arthur?
Thank you.
What?
Just a comment from yesterday's review session about the Borough President's recommendation on the perforated gate.
Right, there, I'll let the project architect, I'll let others, I think, go into more detail, but of course, it's the applicant's intention to certainly be in compliance by the time the, by the deadline for compliance.
That's 2026.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For security purposes, it should just be noted that essentially at all times when someone is at RHI, when the programs are operating, which is most of the day, as some of you may know, the metal gate is up. So I know that the borough president there was discussion about lighting and street and pedestrian safety on the sidewalk. There is a lot of openness happening while programs are in operations, and at night, when everybody goes home, that's when the exterior gate goes down.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Jill Eisenhart from the Red Hook Initiative.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Eisenhart.
My name is Jill Eisenhart. I'm the founder and executive director of the Red Hook Initiative. I just wanted to offer a little bit more context for what happens in our building. We are a community center. This is our 15th year serving the Red Hook community. Our programming focuses on 3 areas. The first is youth development. So we work with young people from the Red Hook neighborhood starting at middle school and providing long-term services and programs for them through age 24. This is focused on making sure they're graduating from high school and either going on to and getting through college with a college degree or going into workforce development and training program. All of our programs are focused on making sure young people who live in the Red Hook houses have opportunities to break the cycle of poverty that is prevalent in the neighborhood. Our second program area is on focusing on training and developing local talent. So we currently have over 120 employees. The majority of those are young people under the age of 24, but 90% of our staff live in the neighborhood. So every year we're paying over $1 million back across the street so that people from the neighborhood are the ones creating programs and providing services for their family and friends and creating their own social change in the neighborhood. We have been in the space on the one side since 2010 and expanded into the second warehouse. We are open 12 hours a day. We are serving 400 youth right now with goals to serve 500 youth a year. And we do not have enough room, which is how this came to be. We are constantly trying to kind of move people in and out of the building to make sure that we're providing the services that are needed. So that's what we do. I don't know if anyone has questions.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Eisenhardt? Mr. Knuckles?
I'm just curious, what in a city of wide need, what brought you to Red Hook?
I think the fact that the Red Hook houses are the second largest development in the city, and recognizing 15 years ago there were not very many services that were there. The program started originally as a project out of Long Island College Hospital. I was a health educator there, so the proximity to the hospital and the extreme need in the neighborhood made for a very organic beginning.
I'm sure you track kind of where are they now. Could you just speak briefly about where some of the kids who have come through your program have gone and what they've accomplished?
Sure. Let's see. So one of our success stories, I think, is a young woman who started out in 8th grade, who is actually now our high school program manager. So she started out as an 8th grader, really struggled through high school, almost dropped out of high school. We were able to get her back on track, got her into college and through college, and she came back and started out there as a frontline worker, and now manages 8 adult staff, and 75 youth are under her programming guidance. So that's kind of an in-house story. I think we have a young man who went through our program, was in and out of juvenile detention in the foster care system, but managed to graduate from the University of Buffalo a semester early, and through one of our sponsors, is now a full-time employee of the New York Business Development Corporation in Albany. Our social work staff helped him find an apartment in Albany, and I hear from the CEO of that company pretty regularly that he's doing great. He's a credit analyst. And I think the fact that we have long-term programming, so someone can come in at middle school and they can be there, and throughout high school they're working there as a college student, having a place to come back to, someone to help them get the college job. The long-term success, I think, is also, it helps the young people who would otherwise have slipped through the cracks. So we have a young man who we've known for over 10 years who just came in this week announcing that he got his high school equivalency diploma. And many staff burst into tears because they were the ones who'd been, trying to get him to go to school 5 years ago. And so I think that having those long-term relationships help with those success stories.
So how many young people per year approximately do you impact?
400 on an in-depth where they're enrolled in a program working toward a specific outcome. And then our broader services for the community, we serve around 5,000 residents of the neighborhood. Some of that, one of our programs is we train young people in technology, and so our young adults have created a community-wide Wi-Fi network. So some of that is just making sure residents of public housing have access to free Wi-Fi that's built and maintained by young adults who then can move on into tech careers. So there are other services like that, or supporting people. All of the NYCHA renewal applications are now online. There are seniors who live in the neighborhood who aren't comfortable with a computer or don't have internet access, so they can now come in, and our young people can help assist them in filling out their renewal forms. So there's a lot of being able to look at the training that we do with young people and matching a need that an older adult in the neighborhood might have.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Eisenhardt? Ms. Delos?
Hi, Jill. Good to see you here. Once this application moves forward, how will this take care of your need for space in terms of, will this take care of things for the next year, 2 years, based on your projections? And I know that, you have plans to continue to serve more and more folks in the community. How much longer will this be sufficient for you at this point?
It will help it will help in the short term. It is not a long-term solution for us, but I think right now there's a point in the day when middle school youth have to leave, and in order for our high school youth to come in, or if our 19 to 24-year-olds, they can't do evening programming right now, they have to do their programming during the day. So this would help free up more room for that to happen. And I think it'll definitely make things easier in the short term. I don't think it's solving all of our space problems for forever, but this is New York City. We learn how to do it, right?
Ms. Levin?
Commissioner Deleuze just asked the question, the immediate question about this application that I had, but as long as you're here, I'm curious to know, Red Hook is a neighborhood with so much new development coming to it. I'm wondering about the interface between your organization and the Red Hook House's workforce population integrating or finding opportunities. Are you working with any of the new developers and businesses coming to the neighborhood to encourage them to engage
Yes.
local talent?
Yes, anyone who's coming in with a project, we're definitely encouraging them to consider hiring locally. We're often asking if there's growth that's happening, anticipating what their employment needs are going to be a year or two from now, and figuring out if there's a way to tailor any of our training that we're doing for things that are happening. I think on a smaller scale, a few of the developers who are still at a planning phase have taken on some of our college students who have an interest in business or real estate or development, and have done some mentorship projects with them. I think on the bigger scale, it's looking at pathways into construction or into union tracks. We have some developers and construction groups that have worked with us. We have some young men who've been recently hired into those positions, with people being willing to take them on and train them. So we're definitely aware of that and try to get in front of those conversations whenever we can.
Well, congratulations on all you do.
Thank you.
Huge admirer.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Ms. Eisenhart? Thank you very much. Next speaker is Marlisa Wise.
Hello, good morning. My name is Marlisa Wise, and I'm the project architect with the firm Super Interesting that has been working with Red Hook Initiative. So I'm here just to answer any design or technical questions about the proposal. There was a question about roll-up gates. I don't know if...
Interesting question.
Take your time. It was a trick question, but
With the roll-up gates, what we have currently are glass roll-down gates. So during the day, the 12 hours a day that Jill mentioned, programming is active. Those allow for sightlines from the street into the building. So there's a lot of connection from the streetscape into the areas of programming that are happening in both buildings. And then at night, the exterior roll-down gate is secured just for safety. And of course, RHI will be replacing those with the 70% visibility roll-down gates that are required by 2026.
Sorry. I'm assuming you're going to replace them in advance of, how much in advance of 2026 are we talking?
It would be good for us to probably do this at the same time that we're expanding onto the mezzanine. So that'll be a conversation with the clients, RHI.
Thanks.
Ms. Levin, then Ms. Ortiz.
The community board had one condition in their recommendation to us, and that it has to do with the curb cut on Hick Street. They would like to see it removed. Is that part of the plan?
So let me just pull up one of the drawings so I can point to where that request. So the community board's request was for removing this additional curb cut. Our proposal does include removing this curb cut on Hicks Street. And in our conversations with the Department of Buildings, they've requested that we keep curb cuts at any location that could still be used as a loading dock in the future. And so this is the one area that we're reducing to a smaller dimension than could accommodate a loading dock. So for the Department of Buildings, we would sort of need the ULURP to go through and be able to change it to community facility use before we go to them and make requests about reducing curb cut or getting rid of the loading dock. Does that answer your question?
Well, so does that suggest that you will go to DOB I mean, I can understand DOB's point of view. I think, you
Yes.
see the garage door that's on that frontage and realize that this used to have a real purpose. I assume that the that the Red Hook initiative doesn't really need a curb cut there.
Correct.
And would you not mind having it go away? And I think the neighborhood wanted it for parking.
Right. RHI would not mind having it go away. The conversations that we've had so far with the Department of Buildings have been that they would like this one to stay. We can press for that and ask them to allow us to remove this. So far, we've only gotten traction on removing this curb
I got
cut.
it. I just wonder if there's a way you can have it, is there such a thing as an inactive curb cut? You can put a sign to say, it's still a curb cut, but you can park here. Yeah. Yeah. Never mind.
Ms. Ortiz?
Hi.
Hi, how are you? On the roll-down gates, my understanding is that, the issue is not so much about transparency, but about ambient lighting at night. In neighborhoods where it's very dark, and the idea that windows and the light, can be lit or backlit, even just a little bit to, so that you can see on the sidewalk a little bit better. The roll-down gates can be very foreboding for residents who are walking around at night. And so I wondered if there might be opportunities to incorporate other kinds of ambient lighting, on the building itself, lighting over the door. For instance, there are examples of and they sort of enhance security in the way that this was intended, I think, until you're able to get to the roll-down gates.
Yes, I think that's a great point, and we'd be very open to adding sort of additional exterior security lighting that would both be security for the building, but also provide more ambient light for the street and people who are walking around the neighborhood.
Okay, I think that would be great if that could be incorporated.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Watts? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Lisbeth Lucero. Welcome, Ms. Lucero.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Lisbeth Lucero, and I'm happy to publicly speak on behalf of the Red Hook Initiative. I am a first-year, first-generation student at Cornell University. I am 18 years old, and I have lived in the Red Hook houses for as long as I could remember. I learned about the Red Hook Initiative through my mother after this devastating aftermath of Hurricane Sandy. Through RHI, my mother was able to provide my family and I living necessities that were taken away from us because of the hurricane. After my mother's personal encounter with the RHI, she recommended I go check out the organization to figure out ways to get involved with the Red Hook community. I started my relationship with the RHI when I figured out I could be a part of job opportunities for the youth. I became a peer health educator, which required me to take sex education courses and teach others about how to take preventable health measures to maintain a healthy lifestyle. In addition to becoming a peer health educator, I took a robotics course with my best friends who were extremely involved in RHI throughout the years. It was not only a place that provided resources for us that we couldn't have access to otherwise, but it was a place where my friends and I could simply avoid the problematic streets that we walked on every day to and from school. I recently reconnected with the RHI because of the College Scholars Program. It was created to guide Red Hook College students through the difficulties of being in college, while also not coming from economically privileged Black backgrounds. I currently work closely with the college advisor, Clay Toya, who connects students in need of laptops, printers, and care packages, and other resources. To end my testimony, I want to say that it's not about me or the people who came before me. It's about those who come after me. And RHI is an amazing place that serves the community and will continue to serve the community. And I'm here to support them, gain the space they need to serve the future leaders of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lucero. And let me just say, Ms. Lucero is also a distinguished graduate of a New York City Outward Bound School.
Yes, I am.
And I have to just take this moment to recognize the work that our colleague Cheryl Efron has done, both in terms of her support for the Red Hook Initiative, as well as her support for New York City Outward Bound Schools, and the intertwining of these great institutions produces great products like Ms. Lucero. So thank you very much.
You stand corrected, it's not my work, it's the work of Greater New York, and we're very lucky to have both represented in our alumni and our current base.
So, questions for Ms. Lucero? Thank you very much, and
Thank you.
good luck back at Cornell.
Thank you.
I hope she moves back to Red Hook.
She's really deeply committed. Next speaker is Barry Kogel. Am I pronouncing that right? Kegel. Pardon me.
I'm Barry Cagle. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at RHI. I'm honored to have been there since 2014. I didn't prepare testimony. Arthur told me I would be sort of like cleanup. It's like the opposite. A couple things I can just add from having that we may have missed. There was an additional member of the community that wanted to submit something in writing, so I can give that to you. And right here. On the curb cuts, it's very much what Commissioner Levin mentioned. It is completely an unofficial parking spot. I occasionally drive to work, and I've never been able to park there as I would because I know it'd be safe, but there's always a car there. And then we do have outdoor lighting by the doors, which is definitely something that we were intentional about, but is always something we could even go further with. So those are the only things. If there are other questions about the operations of the organization, I'd be happy to answer them.
Ms. Deluz.
Hi, how are you? So of the improvements that are either going to be made as a result of this process, how many of them is RHI responsible for doing, and how many is the owner going to be responsible for doing?
RHI is responsible for all of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Cagle. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? Hearing none, the hearing is closed, and good luck to all of you at Red Hook Initiative.
Borough of
Do great work.
Brooklyn, calendar numbers 27, 28, and 29. Calendar number 27, CD 14, C170127 PPK. Calendar number 28, C170128 ZMK. Calendar number 29, N170129 ZRK. A public hearing in the matter of applications for the disposition of city-owned property, zoning map, and zoning text amendments concerning the Caton Flats.
So we have a very, very large applicant team, and let me just call them all up at the same time. Aileen Gorsuch from EDC, Meredith Marshall from BFP Companies, developer, James Johnson from Urbane Development partner, Anali Uwanwani from Freeform Deform LLC, the architect, Andy Cohn from BRP Companies, Renee Casertano from BRP Companies, Mary Serafi from BRP Companies, Patrick Blanchfield from AKRF, Jvanka Duwadu from EDC, is that right? Am I pronouncing that correctly? Yes, good. Joshua Saul from HPD. Daniel Hernandez, where's Daniel? There he is, from HPD. And Stephanie Marazzi from Stewart Beckerman Council. And I leave it to you, Ms. Gorsuch, to manage all of this.
Excuse me, Chairman Weisbrod? Excuse me.
Yep.
Since it's such a large group, can you tell me how many minutes?
15 minutes.
Only 15? Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
We've never exceeded 15 minutes. 15 minutes is the maximum. Go ahead, Ms. Gorsuch.
Good morning, Commission. My name is Eileen Gorsuch. I'm Senior Planner with the New York City Economic Development Corporation. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present the redevelopment of the Flatbush Keaton Market site to you today. I'm going to provide a brief site history, fill you in on the RFP process, and introduce you to the development team who will then take you through the project. The 31,624 square foot city-owned project site is currently home to the 7,680 square foot Flatbush Keaton Market, which is managed by the Caribbean American Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or CACI, and is under the oversight of the New York City Department of Small Business Services and includes a 49-space municipal parking lot managed by the Department of Transportation. Although we refer to the site as the Flatbush Keaton Market, it should not be confused with the series of markets first established by Mayor LaGuardia beginning in the 1930s, such as Essex Market in Manhattan and the Arthur Avenue Market in the Bronx, which through the New York State Agriculture and Markets Law were established as indoor food markets. Rather, the Flatbush Keaton Market was essentially started by vendor merchants selling a variety of goods in an empty municipal parking lot around 20 years ago. And through the support of former local council member Una Clark, Kaki, and others, it has since become a local cultural institution. In November of 2013, in an effort to improve market conditions and to fully utilize the property, EDC issued an RFP for the acquisition and redevelopment of the 31,624 square foot site. The RFP outlined 4 major goals. One was to redevelop the site into a mixed-use development to include commercial, residential, and community facility uses. Central was to develop a new improved market on site. The other 2 goals were to provide a source of quality jobs for the community and to ensure that the development exemplified design excellence. So nearly 2 years later, in October of 2015, EDC was joined by local electeds to announce that BRP Development Corporation was selected to redevelop the site. BRP's proposal stood out from the rest as they had secured a temporary space for the market vendors to relocate during construction and had brought on Urbane Development, which are consultants that were brought on specifically to work with the vendors to better understand their needs, to help them grow their business, and to weather the transition to the temporary space and then back to the permanent space once built. The project, which would require approval of a land disposition, a rezoning, and a text amendment to secure the site as an MIH area, would incorporate a new, more spacious market space on the ground floor, as well as office space for Kaki on the 2nd floor, incubator space for small businesses with a commercial kitchen space and some additional classroom space also on the 1st floor. This is meant to support the growth of the local vendors and entrepreneurs in the community and to ensure a diversity of employment opportunities for the future success of the market. In addition to these benefits, the new building will include 251 units of affordable housing. To elaborate on the project details and the work that has gone into preparing the current vendors for relocation, I would now like to introduce Meredith Marshall, who is the managing partner and co-founder of BRP. He will tell you more about his firm and introduce you to the team that will take you through the project. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Eileen. I'd like to thank the chair, Westbrod, for allowing us to present this transformative project. Thank you to all the commissioners. Again, my name is Meredith Marshall. I'm founding partner of BRP, managing partner and founder of BRP Companies. We're a fully integrated real estate development investment firm. And given that we have 15 minutes, I'll give you the truncated version because I can speak for 15 minutes alone about this project. We have a very strong team, and I'll make the announcement. We have Freeform Deform. NLA represents Freeform Deform, the architect. We have Urbane, which is our business consultant, and we have CACI. I don't know if any members of CACI are present today, but they're the Caribbean American Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and we will build a trade center for them in their headquarters in the building. They've been instrumental in the Caribbean community, but also as a conduit for international trade and commerce for New York State and the country, and they need a home. This would be a great home. Right now, they're in a nondescript building at the Navy Yard, so this would be a welcome treat. By way of introduction and background, I grew up about a mile east of this site. I played Little League with the Brooklyn Bonnies, which is at the Parade Grounds, for 3 years. It kept me out of trouble, and then in high school at Brooklyn Tech, we didn't have a field, as you know, in downtown Brooklyn, so we played at Parade Grounds. So I would traverse this area on a weekly basis, sometimes in the spring and summer on a daily basis, and it's true to my heart, and we want to do a great job. We have to thank Una Clark as well. She had the vision to establish the market about almost 15 years ago. And in order to move this along, we'll have James Johnson Payette will talk about the site and the relocation of and the support of the current market vendors. We have Annalee to describe the design and the considerations of the design of the property. And we have Andy Cohen of my firm that will talk about the affordability and the timeline of the development. Our project goals are very simple. We want to build a sustainable market for the vendors and give them all the support to transform the market to a 21st century market. It's not that now by a long shot. We'll like to build sustainable, affordable housing, so we'll have a LEED building. We'll have all the amenities of a luxury building, but it'll be 100% affordable. Rents at the low, mid, and sort of moderate level, capped at 130% of AMI, which reflects the neighborhood. Again, we've owned a home in the neighborhood for 50 years. You have varying levels of income, socioeconomic levels in the area, and we feel that we totally address that. And we want to build something that people can look towards as sort of a beacon for the neighborhood. Do we have the building up? Well, we're a bit biased, but we believe this is the best-looking building in the neighborhood. And it reflects thoughtful design, not just from our group, but from the city agencies and all the stakeholders. With that, I'll have James describe what we're doing with the vendors market.
Thanks for having me. An area map is coming in a second. So the site itself is at 794 Flatbush Avenue on the corner of Caton Avenue, which is two very important corridors kind of in the Flatbush district, outside of Church Avenue as well. Tons of commercial traffic is running through there. To have a mixed-use building that can add 250 plus units of affordable housing on top of having an anchor like a renovated Flatbush Caton market is a really exciting opportunity for us to really add a lot of amenity to an already pretty strong kind of location in the neighborhood district. You can see here as well the proximity to the park. So we think in terms of increasing the foot traffic to the market, enticing folks who live in Prophet Leffer Gardens near the park as well, but also pulling folks from the south. We can really create an anchor property at that site. As well. It's also close to two separate train locations, the Q at Parkside Avenue, which would be up here, and as well as the Church Avenue stop, which is down here as well. So, well trafficked by public transportation. In terms of the existing space, you can see over there the boards. It's a one-story kind of double-stacked market. The frontage is on Flatbush Avenue, so for the most part, most of the ingress-egress happens on Flatbush. But at the corner of Flatbush and Caton, there's an outdoor plaza that folks tend to frequent as well. Currently, right now, there are two vendors who vend outside in that plaza space, as well as a pop-up arts and culture user that's there as well. So tons of foot traffic on that corridor. And you can see in the interior, you have 41 current vendors that are operating out of the market space. Their stalls are typically around 8 by 8. It's a real mix of uses, a lot of clothing vendors, personal care items, health and beauty, a lot of cultural items as well, accessories, things of that nature. There are a couple food vendors in the space as well, both one prepared food vendor who's actually here today, and then about 6 dry food vendors, mostly selling kind of Haitian cultural foods. Our work today, urban development, we focus a lot on trying to understand the nature of business in the market. So, there's 41 vendors that we're trying to really understand their current operations, but also prospecting in the future what would make sense as we, rebuild this permanent space, but also move to a temporary space to help kind of strengthen the business platform that they're operating on right now. So we conducted a market study externally to look at the neighborhood, the size and composition of the economic activity in the neighborhood, do some customer preference surveying to try to understand what people were doing in terms of shopping patterns and spending patterns. But we've also worked with the individual vendors to ask them about their operational, financial, inventory, and merchandising needs in their space since January. So we've been trying to build a relationship with them. Again, ultimately, trust is going to be really important as we move forward to the temporary space. But our focus has been understanding their existing platforms, what do they need, how can we support them moving forward, and what kind of resources can be brought to bear in the temporary space to make sure there's not a lot of disruption that happens from point to point. The temporary space, as I just mentioned, is a little bit under a mile from the permanent site. So you can see here, it's at the corner of kind of Flatbush and Clarendon Road. So you're kind of at the end of the Flatbush bid district, and you're not quite at the Flatbush Junction district. You're kind of in this middle space, but there is lighter foot traffic down there, but there's still a pretty significant amount of foot traffic that's happening in that area. The King's Theater development is not too far away as well. The site that we have, certainly by driving is pretty quick. It's about 5 minutes, about a 10-minute bus ride, depending on traffic. The temporary space is really focused on not just housing all, the vendors that want to move over, but also providing a space for them to get additional education and training during the 2 years that we're doing construction, as well as offering up an opportunity for them to re-merchandise their existing products or pivot to new products as needed. As well as, we're going to be focusing a lot on curriculum development. We want to have kind of core educational training that we're going to do in the space so that every vendor is having a baseline of kind of business development training they're going to go through over time. And then the marketing is obviously going to be huge, so really focusing on marketing the actual, both the vendors, but also the market itself. So I think I'm getting my mic it off, so you guys ask all the Q&A questions you like. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Analechi Owene. I'm the architect at Freeform Deform LLC. The new Caton Flats building capitalizes on the site to create a new market, retail, and 250 affordable housing units. The proposed actions are related to the disposition and the rezoning from R7A with a commercial overlay of C2-4 to R7-8A commercial overlay of C2-4. There will also be a zoning override to allow for a sidewalk plaza. An environmental assessment statement has been completed, and a negative declaration was issued in October 2016. The proposed development is 279,000 square feet. Approximately 212,000 of that will be residential. Another 11,500 will be the incubator and office space, which is the community facility. And then another 23,000 square feet, which will be the retail and the market. The building was built to accessibility standards. The ground floor will be the location for the new market, and the incubator space here is community facilities with lobby up to the office space for khaki, their new headquarters, and then additional adjacent retail spaces. We have a ramp down to the cellar. We have parking located in the cellar. Required parking is 32 spaces. We will be providing 63 spaces, attended parking, to ensure that there's ample parking for customers coming to the market and residents. The renderings show the varied facade treatments and how we try to break up the facade elements and the massing to try and reflect the rhythm of the adjacent site buildings, the townhouses and the brownstones accordingly. Excuse me. And then you can also see how the 20-foot setback at the plaza area would be activated and programmed to support the market. We've designed this building closely with city planning. There was a lot of work there was a lot of effort put in to try and work the height setbacks to remove some of the building bulk away from the street and adjacent property lines. With the 20-foot setback, we will be covering a portion of the adjacent site building on Caton. They have existing lot line windows, and we're aware of this. We will be covering a portion of them, but considering that we are set back 20 feet, not all of them will be covered. And, well, thank you. Well, just to wrap it up, BRP is committed to sustainable design. We employ active design in this project, and I will take your questions.
Why doesn't the, applicant team just make itself available? I don't know if we want to have 20 people stand up, but, and open up to questions. And I assume, Ms. Gorsuch, you will be the master of ceremonies along with Mr. Marshall for this. So let me start with Mr. Knuckles.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall, good morning, sir. I wanted to ask you about khaki and the market. What will be their property interests in their space? Are they tenants, or will they own the spaces? How will that work?
Well, we haven't quite determined that. The thought is that we could deed them the space for a nominal amount of dollar. We'll fully build out the space for them, or they can lease it for a nominal amount on an annual basis. Depending on the financing, I think we're leaning towards the condo option. Is that correct?
Yeah, it depends on how.
Just come up and identify yourself, please.
Andy Cohen, I'm Director of Development with BRP. It's going to depend on the way the tax credits are, the low-income housing tax credits are structured for the low-income piece of the building. So it might be beneficial to do a ground lease or a lease with a purchase option for a nominal amount of money, or it'll be a condo sale at completion for $1.
So is that for both khaki and the market space, or?
No, the market will be owned by an entity that, with principals, ownership interest between James and Meredith and BRP. We'll be managing the market sort of as a team. khaki will own its headquarters space on the second floor.
Okay, so the developers would own the space that would contain the market?
Yeah, and it's deed restricted, so it'll have to be a market for 50 years. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Dweck.
So, just going back to the ownership structure, the deed restriction for 50 years, how will you, since it's a private entity, it's a for-profit, I'd imagine, it's a for-profit enterprise, how would you ensure that the price structure, the rental structure is going to be viable for the tenants to maintain their tenancy? And then I have another question about well, let's go with that.
So we'll start with the existing tenancy. Vendors who are currently in the market and currently have, in good standing and move to a temporary space will be eligible for grandfathering. So we're going to grandfather the existing terms from a price perspective over to the permanent space for folks who make it over. So that's generally our thinking. Again, we're trying to make sure that as many vendors as possible can come through the pipeline. One thing I didn't get a chance to mention is that the median age for the vendors is 57. So we have to take into account some attrition just naturally because there's some folks that are a little bit on the older side. But in general,
youngsters. That's what happens.
It's a matter of perspective.
When you hire these millennials. He could be my son. So, you know how young he is. But the thought is, when you mention for profit, we're really managing the market, and we've sort of outsourced the management to Urbane, but the thought is to make it a sustainable market. So we're not going to pull profits out. Hopefully we can break even and create a sustainable, robust environment for the current market vendors and future vendors, but it's not a profit center for my firm.
And my second question was going to the borough president's recommendations or comments on the larger units, the 2 to 3, more 2 to 3 bedrooms versus,
Sure.
which would bring down the total amount of units, but increase the size.
Andy, why don't you answer that and get into the affordability as well?
Yeah, okay. So, you know, the building's currently designed per HPD design guidelines and meets the unit mix requirements for HPD. If we were to adhere to the recommendations of the Borough President's Office, we would lose about 12 units, and it would also economically impact the project. We'd lose about $2.3 million worth of subsidy, since the per unit subsidy, and operating income for those units. This project, as is a pretty tight deal, given that we're building out a significant market space and paying for relocation costs for the market vendors, and that space has no income generated at all. So, you know, losing units or adding additional affordability would be tough from an economic standpoint. Just to transition into the incomes, the way it's structured now is under the M squared term sheet, HPD HDC term sheet. So 20% of the units at 50% of the AMI, 30% of the units at 80% of the AMI, and the remaining units at 130% of AMI. So the way the AMI translates to actual incomes is on the low side. For an individual, we'd be looking at an individual earning about $30,000, $31,000 a year, and to the high side, a family of 4 earning about $117,000 a year. So we're talking about, you know, low income tier ranging all the way up to a real working class middle income tier. You know, a teacher and a nurse, municipal employees, and we're not talking about super high incomes.
Ms. Deluz.
A couple questions. Good to see the team in its entirety. I know you guys have been working on this a long time. Just one is that the market's increasing substantially in size, so it'd be helpful to know what the plan is for that expansion. Is it additional vendors? Is it expansion of existing vendors? That'd be helpful. And then I think you may have answered my second question. You know, obviously there's some concern expressed, and I share it honestly, about you know, 50% of the units being at 130% of AMI. And while I recognize that there is a range of incomes in this community board, you know, the need is greatest at the other end. But it sounds like the biggest driver of the mixed income nature is really the need to ensure the affordability of the market space and also the space for khaki. And you know, if you can just confirm that. And then the other question I have just is about the incubator space and how that might be used in the future and the costs with that.
Got it. So I'll handle the market and incubator, they'll handle the affordability. So, you know, if you look at the entire space for the community facility and the market, yes, it's a significant increase. So, you know, there's a dedicated space for the incubator uses, including a 2,000+ square foot commercial kitchen. The idea for the commercial kitchen is not only to service the vendors who want to sell food. We have existing vendors who, you know, make stuff in their homes and in places that aren't commercially licensed. And so we want to offer the opportunity for folks to come in and be able to make products in-house. So that's a significant amount of space. In addition to classroom spaces and community spaces that folks can use in general, you know, also a big piece is targeting community entrepreneurs. So outside of the vendors themselves, you know, during off-market times, folks can be using that kitchen and other incubator spaces for kind of community development work as well. If you just look at the market itself, so the yellow, the existing market is pretty sure it's 7,800 square feet. So we're going to be adding a little bit under 2,000 square feet of market. But when you add food users, their per square foot count is going to be a lot higher. So right now, again, most of the stalls in there are 8 by 8 feet, so 64, 55 square feet. If you're talking about someone who needs a dedicated kitchen, or even ones that are using the shared kitchens, that's probably going to double. In addition to that, we want to have more common area flow. So, you know, the per square foot count per vendor, we'd like to kind of push up a little bit. So there's a little bit more room for actual folks who are coming to visit the market to enjoy themselves, sit down, and things like that. It's a really tight space right now for circulation, so we want to increase that piece of it. So, you know, in terms of the vendor count, I mean, just frankly, we don't know what the exact vendor count is going to be, but certainly we can accommodate all the existing vendors. If we need to add vendors, we can certainly do that. But the mix, we think, is going to shift a little bit because of food. Yeah, I think.
If I may, the incubator piece is, and that's going to be something that you all continue, I guess, how will that be supported?
Sure. So what's going to happen, because it's a nonprofit facility, there will be a nonprofit created for that purpose to support that. So, you know, with grant funding and other types of means of getting fees. So, you know, like most commercial kitchen incubators, they do charge fees to for folks to use the kitchen spaces by the hour, by the use. So that's certainly a revenue generator as well, but, it's going to need to be grant funded.
Just for clarification on the market, has there historically been a waiting list?
It's a good
And
question.
is there a waiting list now?
So CACI does have a list of vendors who potentially are looking to move into the market. There is a list that we've seen. We don't know how active that list has been. In terms of attrition, I've seen over the last year probably a vendor shift. We recently had one of the vendors passed away last week, so that slot's going to need to get filled at some point. So from a vacancy perspective, right now there is probably one active vacancy because of that passing. But there is a list that we've seen. We just don't know how much has been updated. But in terms of, just nominally speaking, knowing the entrepreneurial pool in Flatbush and in central Brooklyn, we've heard lots of, probably an overwhelming amount of folks in the food space who want more, affordable space to do production, but also to do retailing of their food, whether it's a consumer packaged good product or it's a ready-to-eat product. We definitely know there's not enough affordable spaces in the neighborhood for that use.
Is the idea, like, when there is a waiting list, is the idea to first come, first served, or is there a mix that you're trying to achieve
I think over time,
in terms of the kinds of vendors?
Yeah, I mean, I think to speak back to the food piece of it, we definitely would like to have more food vendors in the space. Obviously, one, just because they attract much more frequent foot traffic, and the Caribbean community certainly has a rich culinary history, so we want to leverage that for sure. We'd like to not compete with existing entrepreneurs on the Flatbush Avenue corridor if at all possible, so we want to create synergistic uses both in the market and in the inline retail space. So there are categories that we saw in our market study that would make sense. So home goods is a really good example. There's not a place you can go to get, linens and cutlery and things like that. Same thing with electronic goods and services as well. So we have some vendors in the market that we can pivot nicely into some of those categories and not necessarily disrupt what's happening in the corridor.
I'm sorry, you were going to speak about affordability.
Yeah, just to speak to the affordability, I think the short answer is yes. I mean, I think we're trying to balance community desires and needs and housing policy with creating an economically viable project. When you look at all the costs associated with the CACI space, building out the market, while it's a city-owned land and it'll be disposed of for a nominal price, building all of that space on the site and providing for all the relocation services necessary, it adds up to about $47 a buildable foot just to build the non-income producing spaces. So it's, we do need to balance that. We also think, from we are providing multiple levels of income, and we're finding in communities that have high concentrations of low-income units, we're actually finding, we have developments all throughout the city, a lot in Brooklyn. We're finding that you're seeing children of families who live in, rent-regulated and low-income units that are leaving, and there's nowhere for them to come back when they go off to college and they're higher paid. So we're actually seeing that there's a need for units at sort of the middle working income tier, for children who grew up in the community but that want to move back.
Ms. Ortiz.
Hi. A few questions on the vendors as well. Thank you for the clarification that these are not formal markets in the Essex Street, in the vein of Essex Street Market. That's very helpful for me. I'm curious, what, and I don't believe SBS is in the audience, but what does SBS oversight mean? And as you move to a new location, what are the benefits of SBS being engaged? And what will their role, if any, be in a new location, whether it's subsidy or other kinds of support?
My understanding is that SBS will no longer be involved once the partnership has been established, so they will no longer have oversight over the management.
So what have been the benefits of SBS oversight today? What are we effectively losing as we move to this new market, or gaining? Just
speak to that, James.
Sure. So, and I will say this, we certainly plan to partner with SBS because there's a myriad of programs that they offer that make a lot of sense for the vendors to connect to. So I don't think there's going to be, even if the direct oversight isn't there, from a programming perspective, you definitely want to tap into SBS's, resources for small businesses in general, and particularly around retail. Certainly, we know SBS has funded other subcontractors like SCORE to work with vendors one-on-one. You know, we've met with their retail consultant and some of their merchandising folks, so we know some of that's happening. There's some general business development work that's happening as well. You know, and I know school, you know, SBS also sort of supports CACI in their own business development efforts, you know, as well as the kind of event marketing, things like that. So I feel like those are probably the two pieces that SBS, you know, and again, we've been there for a year, but, you know, we don't have a deep, super deep perspective on this one, but I certainly see SBS's role from a business development training perspective still being pretty strong and wanting to tap into those resources as well. And I know they obviously fund other entities in the community around that same kind of training, so we want to tap into those entities as well.
And in the current market where SBS is engaged in oversight, are there any procurement rules that apply in identifying new vendors? And will you then be free of those procurement rules in the new space?
Probably.
My name is Benga, and I'm with EDC in the real estate department. Yeah, there are different procurement rules for municipally run markets. However, being that this is not one, it wouldn't necessarily have to adhere to those rules.
So they have not been adhering to those rules in identifying vendors?
No, because
Okay.
it's not a municipal market.
Okay. And another?
Sure,
Just
go ahead.
another set of questions with respect to parking. I was pleased to hear that you mentioned the parking will be for customers as well. I don't know if there are any vendors who can speak to, or if you could speak to the degree to which the current lot is necessary for customers and to the utilization of that lot for customers. We all want this to be successful.
Sure.
So I want to ask that question for the record.
So there are some vendors here, so hopefully they can speak to that as well. But from my experience, the weekends tend to be obviously having more foot and vehicle traffic, so I think customers do use the municipal lot on the weekends to some extent. I don't think it's an absolutely like requisite amenity for customers. I think the vast majority of customers are coming on foot or through public transit, some means other than vehicle traffic, by and large. So I think the parking lot is definitely a nice amenity, and certainly one that's been utilized. And on the weekends, it's something that's, you know, important, but it's not a requisite use that I think that we're seeing by and large during the course of the week.
Yeah, and will the parking lot, will it be clear through signage, or other kind of, you know, notification, that it's open and available, and do you know how many spots will be available for customers, and how that will be managed?
So as far as parking, 32 spaces are required for zoning, and right now they have room for 63 spaces, and they will be attended parking spaces. As far as the signage, Mary, do you want to talk?
Hi, Mary Seraphy from BRP. It'll run like an attended parking lot. There'll be signage outside with the rates and all that information as much as we can. We can utilize the 20-foot setback that we have to even provide a lot more visible entranceways and exits and their rates.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Efron.
Thanks. It looks like a lot of hard work's gone into making the market successful. It's really hard to make small vendors successful, and I congratulate you on the pre-work you've done. I'm concerned a little bit about the retail, which I think came up at certification, the pink space as it is, and I think there's additionally some space that might be just storage for retail in the cellar. Will the vendors have exclusives? How will the space complement and augment what seems to be the priority of making sure it's a successful market?
Are you speaking, will the vendors have access to the pink spaces, or?
No. Will the vendors in the market have exclusives on their products so that they're not in competition, but rather it's complementary with the retail that is market retail?
From a legal perspective, I don't think they're thinking about putting deed restrictions on, or lease restrictions on the pink spaces per se, but just fundamentally, the building has to work in complement. So we're not, by no means is anybody involved going to try to program the pink spaces to compete with the vendors in the market at all. We're going to be looking for complementary uses that are going to draw foot traffic both to the market and to the inline retail. But we don't want them to compete. It just wouldn't make any sense for them to have the pink spaces be working in competition with those vendors, because yeah, I mean, like, we're not going to go in that direction at all.
Right. I know that wouldn't be the intent.
Sure, but
I mean,
I mean, it's in our best interest, you know, if the market is not operating and able to cover its costs, then the project as a whole is gonna, you know, have to cross-subsidize that, which will be difficult. It's an affordable housing project. So it's in our best interest to make sure that the retail and the market work together, and we're not putting vendors out of business through retail that's competing with the market.
Okay, I mean, another way to think of that, unfortunately, is that if the retail space was enormously successful in this rising market, it would cross-subsidize the other spaces. So I just put out that there's a little bit of a tension between those two things.
Sure. Yeah, but yeah, I think in general, I think we're excited about having uses in the pink spaces that can draw foot traffic to the market. And I think, you know, to your point, given the changing shifts of the marketplace, we think there are lots of uses that couldn't fit in a market space like this that make sense into a bigger box that are gonna draw that foot traffic in. So, you know, I think we're really confident we can make sure those two things don't clash. Sure. So when I mentioned before, like furniture, for instance, like there, you know, some of the older, I think Sears is having some problems right now. There's a Sears further down the road. You know, you're gonna lose a lot in probably the next 5 years. You're gonna lose a decent amount of you know, traditional kind of big box retailers that are handling the kind of home goods space. We think we can find, you know, someone in this space here that might fit for, as an example, maybe not whole, but that's a good kind of use that kind of complements what we're doing in this space. So if we have some vendors here who are doing accessories and things like that, you could easily get your big ticket bed or bureau and then come here to get some, you know, accoutrement that fits that piece. So we're really looking for synergies there. You know, here, you know, certainly I think a restaurant, a more full service sit down restaurant would make a lot of sense for Flatbush. There aren't a ton of those options there. And certainly, you know, it activates the space in the evening. So again, you know, creating this corridor where you have prepared food that's focused on the Caribbean, you know, kind of Caribbean space is gonna be important for us too. So those are kind of two examples we've been thinking about.
Ms. Levin?
Yes, I'd like to go back to maybe my mind was wandering when you were talking about this component of this very complicated project, but the relationship between the development entity and the market and CACI. I think you described a separate entity you were going to set up to manage the market. Is CACI part of that? Who's running what here?
CACI manages the market, I think, by way of an SBS lease, I believe, or an operating agreement. Moving forward, we think the best way to manage the market is to have someone who understands markets to manage the market. So we will own the physical space, but lease it to a not-for-profit that Elaine and some other groups are part of to provide resources and overall day-to-day management to the market.
Is CACI going to be part of that entity?
That's not their strength, no.
Okay. And the same apply to the incubator space, is that?
Yes. Yes, at one point we thought CACI would be involved in incubator space, but that will be managed by Urbane as well.
So CACI is reduced to having office?
No, they have access to it, but they're not going to manage the incubator.
They're not active day-to-day without their bank, but CACI will be involved in that end of the decision.
Will or will not?
Will.
Okay, so they'll be represented in the ownership management structure of that not-for-profit? Okay.
And CACI will own its trade center space in the second floor.
Right, which is
Yeah.
something entirely separate from the market.
Yeah, but they'll likely utilize some of the incubator space as part of that, right? The training for some of its member organizations, meetings, and things like that.
CACI's main thrust is not market management. It's more providing services to their members, moving outside, not really managing an internal market. So I wouldn't say their role is being reduced, it's being transformed.
Ms. Knight?
So just to build on Commissioner Levin's question about programming for the incubator space, who's going to be involved in programming the space?
So, you know, our kind of working concepts right now are focusing on concepts that we've heard both from community members during our surveys as well as the market vendors themselves around uses that either there's a lack of space for or there's an underutilization of the type of facility to do the kind of things they want to do. So food obviously came up as a really big use in the space, which is why we talk about the commercial kitchen. But in addition to that, a good amount of apparel, accessory, and other kind of textile production is happening. So, you know, when I say production, I mean someone sewing a little, you know, sewing a shirt or something like that. in their space. So offering up a space that potentially leverage the clothing making ability of a lot of the vendors is something we were really excited about, because right now, people are making their products in their 65-foot stalls. So having a space that they can focus on production, which is different than retailing, so it's not as cluttered in the actual vending stalls, was an idea here. So in thinking about leveraging relationships with Pratt and FIT and folks like that, saying in the apparel and space, we want to have partnerships of folks who are subject matter experts who can, use our facility essentially to do the training and technical assistance work in those spaces. So food and clothing and apparel, certainly two big groups. Same thing with personal care items. There's a huge opportunity around cosmetics, beauty products, hair products, things like that. We have a lot of vendors who are either directly focused in that space or are moonlighting in that space, and we would like to, offer up opportunities around that as well. But the partnerships we're trying to create are, pretty vast. I mean, we've talked to Kingsborough Community College, Medgar Evers, Brooklyn College around credit and non-credit coursework that could occur in the space, as well as other service providers like Etsy, Makers Row, that are very content specific around items. So we're really thinking, hopefully creatively, around how to bring in external expertise while still building a baseline around business, which we can certainly add a lot of value with our firm. So when we think about the incubator, that's really kind of the thrust of what it is. Vendors first, and then the community as well. That's kind of the goal.
I guess embedded with that, the question was who is going to manage the market?
It's Urbane, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Levin?
Could I ask a design question of the architect? You mentioned that as the bell was ringing, you had just gotten out the words active design. And I'm curious to know more about what features you're building into the design. Active design is something that the commission has always been interested in encouraging, but people come at us with different, different stuff works in different sites, and we always learn from how it's actually being implemented. So if you could illustrate that a little bit, I'd be appreciative.
So we follow, BRP has, we try to have active design in all our projects. The basics are have the staircase come first before the elevators, but we're kind of trying to come up with some creative ideas, maybe numbering the stairs in the staircase. So, when you get to the top floor, you've done 1,000 staircases by having indication on the platform. We also want to run some programs as well. There may be use of the second floor terrace space for some activities there. Maybe we can have some type of running, and we also have, in terms of the amenities, we do have an exercise room available to all the tenants and so forth.
So are the stairs right inside the front door?
Right, when you come into the stair door before you even get to, you have
And
to
so
go around
you're
to the
invited to
elevator.
take the
Sorry.
stairs before you think about getting the elevator?
Yes.
Good, but I guess the stairs aren't daylit, are they? No.
No. They'll be, we like to paint bright colors and, make it as inviting as possible. Obviously, doing the active design signage that they, propose and so forth.
Okay, and just one more flight and you've done so many more steps. Yeah, good.
I always think it's like, let me do
Motivational.
1,500 steps today
Right,
rather than 14.
Right. Thank you.
Any more questions for the applicant team? Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
The next speaker is Orlando Moreno from the Flatbush Market. What?
It's very close to our Orlando.
Not Moreno. Although you never know. Life after the City Planning Commission. Mr. Moreno, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Orlando Moreno. I am from Colombia. I am barber. I work in the market for 6 years. I'm sorry for my little English. I understand the city, when saw the people selling the things on the street, they decide to divide the parking lot, have parking lot and have the market. And now they are very worried because they think they are going to lose their place. So I think the best thing you can do for help the vendors is looking, it's good to developer Dr. Matijin always opposed vendor go out, but he agreed with the city because the city need housing. He agreed in the first place the market can continue, the vendor can continue working. So it's good idea, developer, new building, housing, affordable housing, but also please pay attention the vendor not lose the place. They origin the place. The market is for them. They work hard on the street, and it's unfair now lose everything, go to the street again if they don't have good development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moreno. Questions, Ms. Moreno? Yes, Mr. Moreno? Not so fast. Ms. Delos.
Mr. Moreno, gracias por venir. You said 6 years in the market? What 6 años que llevas en
Estoy
la
trabajando por
marqueta
6 años.
y qué vende?
Yo soy barbero, corto pelo.
Okay, barber. And are you working with Urbane Development for the transition? ¿Está trabajando con ellos para mover?
Sí, ellos nos están informando, ya nos llevaron al sitio que encontraron. El sitio, los vendedores estamos muy preocupados porque salimos de un espacio muy comercial a un sitio residencial, entonces esa es la preocupación de la persona. Gracias a Dios ellos dicen que nos van a dar 6 meses o un poco más renta free, pero ¿cómo vamos a pagar la renta donde vivimos? ¿Cómo vamos a pagarles a ellos después si no hay negocio? Y los impuestos, todo eso.
So the concern, he has been working with Urbane, he was showed the alternative location. The proposal is to give 6 months free, but they're concerned that you may not earn enough money, even with 6 months free, to pay the bills.
Ms. Ortiz.
Hi. Another question on parking. Do any of your customers use the parking, and how important is the parking?
Very. They used to put the car outside on the street. They put them in the mirror, they put the car.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Moreno? Yes, Mr. Dweck.
Not really a question for Mr. Moreno, but I would like to direct my comments to the applicant team, who's now off. Based on the testimony, I would like to see a longer period than 6 months of free rent abatement, certainly for the displaced vendors. I think that the project should take a couple of years to build, so we'd like to see something more palatable for them. This is their livelihood, and we don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. So that would just be my comment to the applicant team.
Ms. Levin.
It also reinforces the importance of a really good communication strategy for informing people about where the market is gone and where they can find the vendors, and the vendors are still there and that they'll be coming back. And I think, signage on the construction fence and community outreach is going to be critical to you. I'm telling you what you already know, I'm sure. Keeping the market alive in this difficult transition period.
Thank you, Ms. Moreno.
Thank you.
Next speaker is, not sure I'm pronouncing this right because I'm not having a hard time with the handwriting. Isra Gordon? How do you pronounce your first name?
Isra.
Isra,
Yeah,
pretty good.
Isra Gordon.
Thank you.
Well, good morning to everyone. Isra Gordon, I'm from the island of Grenada, the island of spice. And I'm really happy to be at the market. I worked in the city for 27 years in a catering company, and we served the nations of the world. But I also worked as an instructor at the French Culinary for 7.5 years. So I have a lot of students and adults out there who had, career changes and stuff like that. And so after a period of time, I really wanted to put my dreams to work. Growing up in the Caribbean, picking herbs and seeing a kitchen garden and, being around my parents and just having really good food and good teas and things like that, I welcomed the opportunity to be part of the market with the nations around the world, because there are many people from different countries. And since, my background is international, and I see all the culture in the market, for me, it was just the right setting to be there. But I'm in the market for 3 years, and There are a lot of things that was said about coming into the market. During my time there, I've just seen myself depleting in certain areas, being able to keep my business running. I own and operate Delicious Endings Tea House that also does catering at the market. We have a seating area, a small seating area for people, and I have a lot of ideas in my head over the years that I've thought about bringing into the community and sharing with my Caribbean people and other nations from around the world, but also to have a business where I can employ. I think about the youths all the time and how I can teach them to do things, and people who are interested in this career that I'm involved in, to really share in the community, but also that people in the community come and see the products in the market. And so I welcome. I really, truly, I'm so excited about the project that Urbane is doing. I could hardly wait to see it get started, because I'm just gonna say this, and it is a complicated project, and this is really big for me. The fact that I'm in the market and I wanna see things happen, and the market is in a dying stage, I really wanna see Urbane get going with this. I wanna see them start working with us to see the new market, because we need to survive. It's like you've been planting in a certain area for over a period of time, and after a while, nothing is growing there anymore. Instead, everything is dying. And so we have some people who believe in what we're doing, believe in culture, and believe in all the countries of the world to come to put their monies into this project and to see us revive again, and to see our dreams come true. I have a dream. I have a dream I want to see come through in the community. And they have a dream because they see the soil of the Flatbush Caton Vendors Market as a rich soil that was preserved by some people. Some people fought to have this thing started, and some people were there to work hard to sustain it with the little that they have. You know, Dr. Hastic and Miss Anna and people like that. Daily they come because they believe in the market project. It's a wonderful concept, but yes.
You can finish the but. But, go ahead.
But it's very complicated with what they have to do, and I have a lot of concerns with them putting the new market together in regards to the existing vendors.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gordon. Ms. Gordon, wait, there are going to be questions for you, I'm sure, starting with Mr. Dweck.
So, maybe it was mentioned earlier, but is there a vendors association? Is there some kind of coalition of all the vendors?
No.
So what I would suggest is that you get together with your fellow vendors and set up a coalition so that it'll actually be better for the developer, where you can all speak in a unified voice and he can have his negotiations, discussions with one party. So I would recommend that among yourself and Mr. Moreno, you get together and you set up a committee or a board or representatives to work on these issues, because I believe that the developer also is interested in seeing the market continue and flourish. And certainly, up till now, I think CACI was involved, but it seems going forward, CACI is not going to be involved. So that would be my suggestion to you, that you sit down with your fellow vendors and set up some kind of association to speak with one unified voice.
I would love to do that, because unity is strength. That's the only way we're going to survive.
Ms. Ortiz. Not so fast, Ms.
Can't get
Gordon.
away so quickly. Thank you so much for your testimony. I'm curious, you said that, the market is in a dying state.
Yes.
To what do you attribute that to? Is it, the vendors themselves, what it is they're selling, how they're selling it? Is it the changes in the marketplace, the changes in the customer base? Like, what is it that creates this dynamic so that we can avoid it in the next iteration?
There are many different areas, and as James comes around with his team, we continue to share with them. One of the areas is that times are changing. The way you did things before and the way you're doing it now, it just doesn't work anymore. So if you're going to be doing things the same way, you're going to get the same results. In the meantime, everything else is improving in and around us, and the community is growing, but we're not. So, change, it's a time for the change.
And is your sense that vendors are open to making those changes?
You know nobody likes change, but I'm just asking.
That we know.
Some people have a mindset that they've become complacent in the way they did stuff, and it's hard now to come to tell them that, well, you can't do it that way anymore because it's just not working. It is a business place. It's not a place to hang out. It's a place where people depend upon to feed their families, to pay their mortgages, to pay their rent, and to have a better lifestyle. You don't want to be in the same way. Last year you couldn't get a new pair of shoes, and the next 10 years later, now you're going to the thrift shop. No. You want to be able to have a business that you can depend on, a business that's now making sense because it has the right support. We have the right agencies to educate the people, to bring them up to another level, and I think that's what the developers are all about, is to look at what we're doing, it's a great concept, and to build on it and to make it better.
I mean, it sounds like there's an inherent challenge here if if the vendors move without making these changes, we may struggle to have a sustainable market in the way that perhaps you're suggesting there's a struggle now.
There is a struggle, but I think if they carefully, they've been trying to do, collect information from us and put it all together, and so we can speak with one voice, so we can look at everything together, where we are and where we need to go. I think slowly the people who didn't get it would begin to get it, because growth is necessary in anything.
And one last question, I'll ask you the same question I asked your fellow vendor. To what degree do you depend on the parking, or do your customers depend on the parking?
That's been a real problem. I come in, I have to unload a ton of stuff, and I'm working alone most of the time. I have nowhere to park. There's no parking in the street. The market doesn't own the parking lot. And so we've been getting tickets like crazy back and forth because there's no, if you work in a building, there might be some kind of little leeway for you because you work there and then you can park. That doesn't exist, right? So now, to have parking for the businesses, especially all the housing that would be now part of the new market, parking is extremely necessary. Our customers need parking, the vendors need parking, and also people on the outside who come in to shop around Flatbush. We're welcoming more people to come into the area, and so we need more parking. So they can park and shop and don't think that, they have to run away or they might be getting a ticket. Like people come into the tea house now, I want this, but I'm gonna get a ticket, I have to go. And you know what I say? This is not McDonald's. It's not a fast food store. So park in the parking lot, because there's a parking lot, and then you can come in and sit down and have your own time, personal time. Because at the Delicious Endings Tea House, tea time is any time.
Ms. Gordon?
Thank you.
That was a great exit line, but not yet.
Thank you, so great, and I really hate to distract from that, but has the developer discussed with you what your rent will be in the new space?
Well, they kind of said something like it's not going to be more than what we're doing now. I really do think that what was imagined in our present state was over our heads, because we were under the impression that things would just evolve in such a way, and it didn't quite go that way. So now we seem like we're in the res of things. So if we have to wait 6 months now, and to put this thing back, because you have to restructure our businesses, moving from one point to the next. 6 months is not enough. I don't know if 1 year is enough. And I don't know if the amount that they are asking us presently would help us. Because we have a lot, when you have been broken down for so long, which is what's the case of many vendors in there, it takes a long time to build again. And so I know a lot of people are looking for their cooperation in helping us to get to a point of where we can say now we feel comfortable. and this, we can afford it. A lot of people are worried about new development. We're gonna have to pay such high rent. We can't survive now. What happens later? And what are they gonna do to help us now to make more money? Because I say, I make more money, I have no problem paying.
Okay, thanks.
Actually, Ms. Gordon, I have a couple of questions. You've been in the market now how long?
3 years.
3 years. And it's been very active over those 3 years, or are there a lot of vacancies now, or
No.
how are your fellow vendors doing?
Are you referring to the booths, or are you referring to people coming into the market?
No, the booths,
All the booths are full.
all the booths are
There's
full.
a lot of people come in, and there's a long list of people coming in every day because they come in and they see people starting their businesses, which is a purpose so you can start up and grow, and then you can, branch out. A lot of people come in all the time looking for spaces, but there is no space, so it is just so awesome that more spaces are opening up, because I do think that we need to add quite a few different things in the market that would attract more people to come. They need a reason to come to the market. There's a lot of competition on the outside, and it doesn't make them feel like if they need to come into the market. What does the market have that we need to come in for? So with the developers doing this new thing and reviving and strengthening the market, people are gonna find it not only interesting, we have a new space and it's beautiful, but we have more things to offer within the market without losing our culture.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Bryant Brown. Welcome back, Mr. Brown.
Thank you kindly for the opportunity to speak yet again. It's an opportunity, responsibility I don proudly. My name is Bryant Brown, and before I begin, I'd like to thank again, appreciate and acknowledge the previous speaker for not only her rousing speech, but also for encouraging us to grapple seriously with the implications that new development will have on the livelihood economies of local communities, which is also something I wish to do specifically with the attention towards building service workers. As you all know, I'm here, my name is Bryant Brown, I'm here testifying on behalf of my union, SEIU 32BJ, the largest property service union in the United States. I'm here speaking today because I want to ensure that Caton Flats will create high quality jobs for building service workers. I cannot stress or emphasize, again, this point enough. We do need more affordable housing units like the ones that the developers are building at Caton Flats. But again, we cannot build our way out of an affordable housing crisis. As long as there are hardworking people earning too little to afford rising housing costs, families are going to continue getting priced out of their homes, and this crisis will continue. It is essential that we encourage developers to provide both affordable housing and high-quality jobs, and I truly do believe that projects like Caton Flats can provide both. This is, again, why I urge you, commissioners, to recommend that the developers of Caton Flats commit to creating high-quality building service jobs. This project should only receive approval from the commission on the condition that the developers commit to paying their building service workers the prevailing wage, which again is the industry standard for residential buildings in New York City. These are also the kinds of jobs that BRP has committed to providing in other properties across the city. One such instance that has come before you all is La Centrale in the Bronx. This developer has been a responsible actor and has provided high-quality jobs elsewhere, while at the same time providing much-needed affordable housing. We are asking that they do the same here. Good building service jobs should be the standard and not the exception. And to sort of hopefully anticipate some of your questions, which might be a grave mistake, we have had open communication with BRP, and we're looking forward to continuing that conversation. So again, I strongly recommend the City Planning Commission to urge the developers of this project to create good building service jobs. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I take it, thank you for saying that you've engaged in discussions with BRP now. Are you talking to them about the market as well as the residential, or just the residential?
From what I understand, primarily the residential, but I would have to confirm and get back with you.
Thanks. Questions? Mr. Knuckles?
No, I just wanted to understand, are you testifying in favor of the project, Mr. Brown? Or not in favor of the project?
Signed up in opposition.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yes, that's usually the situation. I would love to unfold the master plan to you, but it seems it's politics. Politics is tricky.
He's honest.
Okay. Well, frankly, I've heard more fervent opposition, so it's your points are well taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Brown? Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience.
Likewise, thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? If not, the hearing is closed. Thank you all.
Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 30, CD4, N160396ZRM, a public hearing in the matter of an application for an amendment of the zoning resolution concerning the West 23rd Street text amendment.
Yeah, but no, freeform. Freeform, deform, plus deform. And what was the other one? What was the other argument? Super interesting, yeah. Freeform, freeform, deform.
I love that. I'm gonna look them up. I really like that building.
No, it's a handsome building.
Okay, the first speaker is Jerry Johnson. Mr. Johnson.
Good afternoon. Should I wait a minute?
You're going to play to an empty house here, Mr. Johnson.
Oh, wow.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod and Commissioners. My name is Jerry Johnson. I'm with the firm Fox Rothschild, and we represent the applicant, 23rd and 11th Associates, LLC, on this text amendment.
Let's start it from the beginning.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod and Commissioners. My name is Jerry Johnson. I'm with the firm Fox Rothschild, and we represent the applicant for this text amendment, 23rd and Associates, LLC. The application today is for amendment to section 9824 that, if approved, will allow floor area to transfer between two C63 districts on the site. And the site in question is at 23rd and 11th Avenue in Manhattan, and it's currently occupied by the U-Haul facility. A little bit, and if approved, the new building will be approximately 288,000 square feet of floor area. It will be built totally pursuant to the underlying bulk height and setback regulations. It'll be roughly 13 stories in the mid-block up to the maximum height of 145 feet, and then built pursuant to the Special West Chelsea Sub-Area D tower regulations on the corner of 23rd and 11th. And the tower goes up to 250 feet with a base of 90 feet. The building that you see on the far eastern side of the site is an existing 3-story building that U-Haul will keep and consolidate all of their operations on the site. One of the things that was very important to them is that they remain in this location in the future. A little bit of history. When 1999, the commission rezoned the 2 block fronts of 23rd between 10th and 11th and the 11th Avenue frontage to an R9A an MX3 district. It was an R9A mapped on top of the existing M15, which raised the residential FAR to 7.52. Subsequently, in 2005, when the Special West Chelsea district was created, the mid-block was rezoned to a C63, which is an R9A equivalent FAR of 7.52. They regulated the FARs in the Special West Chelsea district in the sub-areas by way of a chart. And when they created that chart, they rounded the numbers. They regulated them and they rounded the numbers. So the 7.52 became 7.5. That 0.02 differential, which equates to, under 500 square feet, precludes us from moving floor area across the district boundary line, and that's all we're here today. So that we could, the volume in the middle of the block is capped at 145. So the volume on the avenue had much more area to absorb the air rates above the U-Haul portion of the site, and that's why we're here today. This effort has been a 10-year effort by the applicant with the property owner, and if this is successful, it will hopefully lead to a redevelopment of the site pursuant to the West Chelsea District regulations and create the gateway on the southern site of the 23rd Street that was envisioned by the regulations.
Nicely done.
Questions to Mr. Johnson?
I just had a quick question.
Mr. Knuckles, then Ms. Levin.
Jerry, what is the dimension on the setback at the lower level on 23rd and 11th?
It's 10 feet,
10 feet.
which is the requirement.
Okay.
Ms. Levin.
Well, looking out in the audience, I imagine we're about to hear from the community board, but by then you'll be gone. So, or at least not at the microphone. Not able to respond. So taking it a little bit backwards, could you please give us your thoughts on the community board's recommendation with respect to restoring the affordable housing units from 28th Street? And confirm, I guess is what the community board would like us to do, is to confirm the commitments that are in your letter about extending affordability.
I can say that what happened to the Department of Buildings is still under review. The letter that we've provided that's in the package as part of the community board review is the applicant's position, and they're committed to seeing that.
Nothing else you'd like to say in anticipation of what we're about to hear?
Any other questions to Mr. Johnson?
I have one.
Ms. Ellis?
Thanks for being here. So you said 10 years. So how has the project evolved in 10 years? And I mean, I'm sure it's a long story, but what were the major changes over the 10 years?
The issue is, how do you incorporate an existing non-conforming use into a new residential development and move forward? The idea was not to seek a discretionary action, but try to do it all as of right. And that was part of one of the commitments that were placed on the review going forward with the property owner. And so it was trying to coordinate and integrate that use into the site, and especially considering the way the site is currently configured with the 3-story building on the far eastern end, 1-story buildings in the middle of the bigger building on the corner. How do you integrate that and not move it around? And this was the solution that worked best at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
The next speaker is, although he wasn't mentioned by name, Joe Restuccia. Got a nice preview of you, Mr. Restuccia. Welcome.
My name is Joe Restuccia. I'm speaking for Manhattan Community Board 4. I'm the co-chair of the Housing Committee, and I'm also speaking for my colleagues Lee Compton and Betty McIntosh, who are both ill today, co-chairs of the Chelsea Land Use Committee. We have a curious letter in front of you, and we have to understand why we've come to this conclusion. Broadly, on this site, we understand that in the rush to draft West Chelsea, Hudson Yards, the Garment Center changes, there were errors made. It happened all the time. We've been doing these FUCAs, follow-up corrective actions, to fix them. And in this case, in fact, this was a small error that created a problem about shifting bulk. So broadly, we have a developer, Related, who is the biggest player in our neighborhood and the biggest developer, of course, on the west side in the city, understanding the zoning beautifully, technically, and perfectly. And so they come to you, ask for a public action saying, this particular .02 change made a mistake, and therefore we cannot transfer 70,000 square feet from the east to the west and keep this industrial use, the U-Haul, in place. And it makes perfect sense. What we cannot understand is this same company, which has built 30 projects in our neighborhood, continues to be engaged and lively and working with us to develop also affordable housing as part of those projects from the voluntary program, could have missed the fact that as a key piece of the West Chelsea rezoning, there was a protection put in place to preserve affordable units in existing buildings throughout West Chelsea, the same piece of text put in Hudson Yards, the same piece of text put in the Garment Center, Special Garment Center District. It was not adopted in 2005 when the district was put in place. It was adopted in 2009 as part of the Western Rail Yards rezoning because it was a major political back and forth between the community board, the city council, and the mayor's office. And as a predicate to the certification of the adoption of the certification of the Western Rail Yards ULURP, this language was included. And that language says specifically, for an existing residential building, anyone in West Chelsea District, in Hudson Yards and 2 sub-districts, and in the Garment Center sub-area P2, that these buildings would be protected. Our community board has spent all of 2016. We have lost 10 buildings with 103 affordable apartments, which Department of Buildings has issued demolition permits for buildings which cannot be demolished. So I bring to your attention that our community board is seeking to sort of do something to resolve one matter, but we find it extraordinary that the related companies could claim ignorance of the zoning, and ignorance that, in fact, an absolute predicate to their own certification of the Western Rail Yards, the ULURP, they were not aware that a building on West 28th Street, which is adjacent to their site, for which I would know, it's the Zaha Hadid building, the penthouse is offered at $45 million. So we came to them, they clearly had egg on their face, they tried to work with us, and we're very happy they're working with us. And we thank you for empowering us over many years to be able to work with large companies like this. So they've said, here's how we're gonna try to fix this. But I bring to you the broader problem is that this commission made a decision back in 2009 to help preserve over 2,000 units of affordable housing in scattered walk-up tenements throughout 3 districts.
You can finish
And
the sentence.
And the Department of Buildings has not been able to enforce that rule. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Questions for Mr. Restuccio? Ms. Deluz.
Hi, Joe, always good to have you here. Obviously, a big part of the recommendation from the community board is obviously making requests of HPD, and I'm just wondering what level of communication there's been with HPD thus far, either through the community board or to your knowledge with the developer?
I've engaged directly with Matt Schaff at the General Counsel of HPD, because one of our concerns here isn't putting any sort of restrictive declaration on our property. It cannot be in favor, the community board needs to be in favor of some public agency like HPD. And we're continuing those discussions, and we want to finish them prior to the city council, of course.
Great.
Ms. Levin.
And Joe, as you work with, I mean, I can only imagine the conversations with DOB as you discover one more building is gone. What steps is DOB taking to deal with this?
The specific request that the community board elected officials had, we had met with DOB in May of last year, was to merely put a flag on the biz system to say this district, like a landmark flag, you know, check mark. DOB said it was impossible given the limitations of the biz system, and assured us, however, this was absolutely would not happen again. And we've had 6 occasions since that meeting. The most recent 3 weeks ago, where developers have been issued demolition permits. So, and I want to note for the record, Related has made commitments, and we're very happy they've negotiated that. But additionally, they've said, well, this building was not structurally sound and it went through this process. None of that happened. That's all just trying to paper going backwards. So we're very concerned that this gets settled one way or the other to make sure that not only for Related, but for every other developer who has used this rule, has ignored this regulation, that these affordable units get restored.
Well, and it's certainly a cautionary tale as we begin to hear in other areas that get rezoned about the importance of instituting these tenant protection measures.
Our district has certificates of no harassment and demolition restrictions and prohibitions. And even with that, it has made no difference. And there are 103 households that are gone.
Ms. Ortiz.
Hi, thank
Hi.
you for your testimony. I'm curious, I understand you're bringing this to our attention, but is there legal recourse here?
We are actually looking at this from a broader point of view. Just recently, we realized that there may have been an error in drafting in this specific text. The text for Clinton Special says if you are eligible for a city-owned, for a city-funded program, you cannot be demolished. The text for West Chelsea, Garment Center, and Hudson Yards says if it's feasible, and we believe that was a drafting error because there's a lot of back and forth that happened very quickly, and we're very concerned that one word could make a difference with 2,000 units.
So in fact, that may suggest there's no legal recourse without a change in the language.
It may be that there have been FUCAs done before, and we're looking right now at LUCATs at the commission's reports in 2009, because we believe the commission's intent was the eligibility, not the feasibility, as all the specific back and forth is in the report.
Ms. Efron?
This is outside our domain, but since we have you here and you seem to be living this on a daily basis, were any of the units occupied?
They were
affordable
all, in every building, when we started, all these units were occupied. And over a very short period of time, as usually happens, all of a sudden, one of the community board members came to me and said, there's now mail in the vestibule, what's going on? All of a sudden, people were gone. On this very site on 23rd and 22nd Street, outside of the related ownership is an SRO of 23 units, 559 West 22nd Street. The building was fully occupied. We see a certificate of no harassment. Tenants were harassed. It was revoked. It was reinstituted. And the tenants took a buyout and relocation because the conditions had gotten so bad, because the permits issued by DOB created work where they couldn't live there any longer. So yes, the majority of these units were fully occupied. Fully occupied.
Ms. Delarose?
Familiar with these circumstances, which are very, very tragic and preventable, as obviously, which is what the community board was trying to do. What level of organizing is going on in the area, in buildings that may face similar changes in the future?
The
or
community board has
threats?
taken two actions. One is we're doing a large public forum to let people know that, in fact, they're in protected buildings. And the second one is we're actually going to start to be posting on people's front doors and apartment doors a serious come to a meeting, deal with this. When an owner says to you, your building can be demolished, when we know it can't, that means people tend to leave, tend to take a buyout, or just get worried and are scared and leave. But I think the bigger issue now is beyond the public information. If the interpretation becomes feasible versus eligible, that means if I buy a site for $28 million, like an owner is claiming on 22nd and 10th, well, of course it's not feasible for an HPD program because I've made it not feasible. So that's not the intent of what we had to do here across these special districts. The idea was to preserve both existing, allow huge development and preserve existing people and existing buildings at the same time.
If I may, one more time. I mean, it's one of the things that the community, I didn't see this actually in the community board's recommendations. I don't know if there's ongoing communication with any of those tenants that have been displaced.
We have lost them.
Yeah,
We have tried to see to that, we have lost them.
Yeah, that's always the challenge. I know one of the things that we have fought for in my area is in subsequent lotteries, requesting that they have preference as displaced tenants.
Great.
Mr. Marin?
Good afternoon. The certificate of no harassments are filed. I kind of know the answer to the question, and I just know Michelle does too. I'm just want to follow through a line of questioning. The certificates of no harassment are filed with whom?
With HPD.
And HPD's involvement or discussions in this are?
HPD then receives a pile of information from the owner. They do an investigation. Based upon that information, they put out a notice. It's sent to the community board. We disseminate it widely. And then depending upon the response, there is either a yes or a no finding or a finding. Now, in the case of this building, by the time Related bought it, it was empty. However, the community board had met with the prior owner who asked for the, as she put it, the zoning regulations to be relaxed. He said, no, this is not a relaxation thing. This is a regulation. The building was vacant by the time Related bought it.
But doesn't HPD require that although the units may have been lost, for you to replace them anyway as a result of the fact that you have certificates of no harassment?
Yes and no. The current language here says that you have to replace at least that what was there. However, what was there was affordable, and there is no requirement for affordability.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Restuccio?
I would just,
Yes.
I mean, as you know, there's a working group around this very issue as a follow-up to MIH. I think it would be helpful, and I know you know many of the people that are involved, for you to share the recent experiences that the community board has had as part of informing future citywide legislation.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? Hearing none, the hearing is closed.
Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 31, CD2, N170201 HKM. A public hearing in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of the Sullivan-Thompson Historic District.
First speaker is Mr. Paman Lodi from Redney. Welcome. Thanks for your patience.
Of course.
Hearing has generated a lot of interest, so I'll keep my remarks very brief. Good afternoon, my name is
There are
Payman.
hordes waiting outside.
I
so
know,
just-
you should see us around the corner. My name is Payman Lothy with the Real Estate Board of New York. Here today because we'd like to submit our comments on the proposed Sullivan-Thompson Historic District. We submitted our comments to LPC regarding the architectural merits of this district, but generally speaking, we believe that it lacks the obvious distinctiveness, both architecturally and historically, to be considered a unique section of the city, and had suggested modifications that, at the very least, would mitigate the adverse impact that the designation would have. From a planning perspective, however, we question the decision to designate substandard buildings in an area that is more than adequately covered by landmarks and so well served by transit. So nearly 75% of the buildings within Community District 2 are now landmarked and preserved in perpetuity. This is especially troubling given the rich transit resources in the area. For instance, the West 4th Street station provides access to over 2.6 million jobs within a 30-minute subway commute. While this is nearly the same number of jobs that are accessible from the Times Square station, ridership numbers fail to reflect that. This is likely due in part to restrictive land use measures. Our analysis found that over 95% of the properties within a quarter mile of that station are landmarked, and the accompanying zoning limits density to an average maximum FAR of a 3.2. Results were similar for the Spring Street and Prince Street stations as well. The city continues to seek ways to deliver on its ambitious affordable housing goal, and it is important to note the impact landmarking has on housing production. Over a 10-year period of time, only 5 units of affordable housing were produced in historic districts throughout the city, none within the Greenwich Village Historic District, and its numerous extensions. While some advocates have made a planning case that preservation preserves the existing stock of affordable housing, our analysis found that over a 7-year period of time, the village lost nearly a quarter of its rent-stabilized housing stock, which is double the rate experienced throughout Manhattan and quadruple the rate experienced throughout New York City. Additionally, studies have shown that historic districts have much higher household median incomes, declining populations, smaller household sizes, and poor racial diversity. As the city continues to outpace its projected population growth, it is important that all land use actions carefully weigh the impact on housing and plan for growth in a smart and sustainable way with adequate infrastructure to support expected growth. The Sullivan-Thompson Historic District includes numerous tenement buildings. From a historic preservation perspective, the LPC has already designated this building type, the tenement building type, in a number of historic districts like the Upper West Side, East Village, Lower East Side, and most recently South Village. It is important to note that tenement buildings are a type of housing stock that has been deemed substandard for decades, and from a housing policy perspective, we question the preservation of so many tenement buildings. Planning for housing needs of our residents must continue to be a priority in our land use policy. As we have demonstrated with our earlier reports, historic district designations have been an impediment to housing development. Preservation has an important role in our city, but we must not let the process overtake our other vital city goals. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. You're going to submit that testimony?
Yes.
Thank you. Questions? Hearing none. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? And I see none and hear none. So this hearing is closed. And Madam Secretary, is there anything else to come before us today?
No, Chairman Weisbrod.
I will then entertain a motion to adjourn. I hear no dissent. We are adjourned. Thank you all. See you in 2 weeks.